All right, so the first thing this evening is going to be our work session, which is going to be with the Comcast franchise item. And Comcast is here to discuss this item with us. Or no?
Not yet. Are the attorney,
This is Brandon.
Perfect.
He's our attorney.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no worries. So Comcast isn't here yet. I'm not Comcast. My name is Brandon Dittman with the law firm of Wilson, Williams, Feldman, and Dittman. Our firm just changed names, so I have to think about it every single time I say it these days. But I'm a partner at that law firm. We specialize in representing local governments and utility and telecommunications matters. We've probably done hundreds of franchises in the past several years. My partner, Ken Feldman, actually did the very first cable franchise in the state of Colorado 40, 50 some years ago and specialized in that ever since. So we were part of the the town's negotiating team for the franchise agreement. This is a brand new franchise with Comcast, first franchise. The process is slightly different for a new franchise versus a renewal. And, I think we were able to work out a pretty good deal with Comcast. They are supposed to be here. So if at some point in time, hopefully Zach from Comcast does show up and he can answer any questions you might have about deployment specifically. But I thought what I could do for you is kind of walk through, one, what a cable franchise is, and then two, some of the key provisions of this agreement, if that works for the board.
That's perfect.
Yep. So this is a cable TV franchise. What it does is it basically allows the use of the rights away for cable TV specifically. And saying cable TV is very much intentional. A lot of times we think about these as, also being broadband, but what we're allowed to regulate pursuant to federal and state law is only the cable TV portion of the deployment. Now, I think we all know that incidentally, if they're allowed to provide cable TV services, and they'll also use those same wires for broadband services. However, a lot of questions I get from city councils and board of trustees, can we regulate what they charge for internet? What can you say what the minimum speed levels are? Those sorts of things are really off the table. And what we can really regulate is the TV portion of the services being offered. And so with that kind of preface out of the way, I'll jump into some of the key provisions. So, the biggest thing is because this is rent for use of the right of way, this is, authorizing use of the right of way. There is rent involved with that, franchise fee payments. You may already get that with your other utility providers, but for cable specifically, we're given a maximum cap of what we can charge for use of the right of way, and that's 5%. So that's typically higher than what you see for electric and gas, but it is 5%. That 5% is on gross revenues. So it's basically whatever sort of revenue that Comcast generates within the town. they'll be paying 5% of that, back to the town for rent of the right of way. And so that's how that works. In exchange for use of the right of way, and payment of the fees, there's also a number of, kind of protections we have for use of the right of way and benefits you receive as part of the overall deal. In order to make sure they're paying the overall fee correctly, we do have multiple audit rights in here, that we make sure that they're paying it correctly. And if they're not, we can audit them and make sure that they are doing that in the way that it should be. That's not super common, but occasionally from time to time, we do recommend an audit to make sure that, they're paying those fees correctly. And the biggest part of that, honestly, is making sure they're being divided appropriately between TV and internet. There's all sorts of insurance and indemnification requirements. A big piece I want to point out specifically is a letter of credit that they're required to post. And so basically, if they violate this franchise in any sort of way, typically with, things like relocations or restoration of the right of way, we can pull upon that letter of credit to help reimburse the town for its cost, which is one of the many benefits of the Comcast franchise we don't typically see in other types of franchises. I will point your attention to section 6 as well, which is the customer service standards. Those are also attached as the full customer service standards are also attached later on in the franchise. But one of the things that the Cable Act allows us to do is adopt local customer service standards, for the provision of cable services. And so with Comcast, the Colorado Communications Utility Alliance, which is an organization in Colorado, I think comprising about 60 different governmental entities, has negotiated with Comcast fairly comprehensive customer service standards that we have, we are recommending to also be adopted in addition to this franchise. And what that does is basically when someone has a problem with their Comcast service, Comcast is required to follow those guidelines, which are, again, more stringent than what the federal government requires. It also gives some ability for the local government entity to do some enforcement if those are not being followed. We've found that, through using the CCUA model, been pretty successful in getting a higher level of customer service than we would otherwise be entitled to under federal law. And so, again, those are an attachment to the end. They're quite extensive, but just to note that they are better than what you would get if we just had a standard federal, the federal forms. A big part of of any franchise, if we're going to grant to an entity like Comcast or Excel or anyone else, is making sure that they're using the right of way in a way which is both safe and doesn't result on degradation of the right of way and impacts that the town would have to then fix. And so Section 9 of this franchise is all about making sure that use of the right of way is being done in a safe manner. It has been reviewed by your public works staff and made sure that it's consistent with our local regulations here in Wellington. But again, these are much more extensive than what you even have in your code. Moving on to some of the other provisions I just wanted to, briefly speak to. Service availability. I know that's probably a big thought in your mind. So, what I can tell you is that because this is a new franchise and Comcast is a new entrant into this market, we can't, pursuant to federal law, force them to do a home by home build out, or we basically require them to serve every single home. What we can do is negotiate, and we have in this franchise, the requirement they tell us what their build out plans are, that they tell us that their goals are to serve every home in Wellington, and that we can basically verify that through required check-ins, which is what we've negotiated as part of this franchise. But because this is a brand new franchise, again, we can't put the same kind of service obligations on them as we could under a renewal franchise. So that's why you may see that in other types of franchises you approve, but because it's a new one, it's not something we can require. There's also the big part of the benefits of this franchise is some of the PEG benefits, we call them, which are the public, educational, and governmental access. And so for you guys, it's really, like we're doing right now, streaming your content online to make sure that the citizenry can see their boards and commissions meetings. Something we've been able to negotiate with Comcast that is not common in every franchise is what we call a PEG grant. where they're basically willing to give the town a grant in order to buy equipment to help you stream your council meetings. And so I know, speaking with Patti and with Dan, that's a big need in the town of Wellington, and a great benefit we were able to negotiate as part of this franchise. And so that's a $40,000 franchise we negotiated with them. We will have to verify basically what we're purchasing, that it is for a qualifying expense. But, you know, I think we all understand that this stuff is not cheap and that we can easily meet our needs through that grant. In addition to those provisions, there are a number of other, you know, important parts about what happens if there's a violation, how that works, and there's a process we work through. The intent there is to try to make it cheaper than if we just go directly to a court, right? But have a process we can work through to resolve issues. And I can tell you, in probably the 12 years we've been doing this, we are usually pretty successful with Comcast in resolving issues that there may be. Not to say the relationship's always perfect, as no relationship ever is, but we've been pretty successful with the franchise violation language we have, and making sure that they comply. So with that is a pretty high level overview of the franchise and what it does. So I'm happy to answer any questions here. Did Zach show up? So Zach is here to also answer from Comcast, to answer questions on deployment and service availability. But I'm here to answer any questions about what the franchise does, what its provisions say, and overall about what franchising is. So,
Thank you.
Yep.
Trustee Daly, have any questions on the presentation so far? Trustee Mason?
Maybe just a question for the Comcast folks. I am just kind of curious what, you know, what type of services you guys are looking to provide as far as speed and availability and that sort of thing. Just
So-
curious.
Should have waited for that. That's
Oh,
okay.
sure.
Go for it. You're up. You're up.
Sure, thank you. Zach Rothmeyer, representing Comcast. Sorry for my tardiness, went to your brand new municipal building, which is where I've met Patti before, but so again, apologize for being late. But as far as serviceability, everything's gonna be fiber to the premises, which be multi-gig symmetrical by the time it's built. Right now, it's probably gig symmetrical, but we'll be expanding on that as we go through, so that your businesses will have that capability for Comcast Business to, you know, multiply that by whatever they would need. We've talked a little bit about your farmers market and some of the downtown revitalization and making sure that that has service as we move forward. But residents will have access immediately to anything that's gig symmetrical and above.
Awesome. Really appreciate the answers on that. And Mr. Dittman, I did appreciate your explanation on the franchise fees as far as that goes. I did have some questions there, but I think you pretty much cleared them up for me. So appreciate that.
Trustee Wiggin, you have any questions? Trustee Teets?
I do have some questions. This is related to your rollout and scheduling on how you guys plan on implementing it. I know they said or stated that you could not guarantee that you're going to give it to all right away, and that's understandable. Just because of the cost, I can imagine, is exceedingly high, dropping all of that wire. What is your plan? Where are you geared to start with providing services to Wellington?
Sure, I'm gonna call my colleague Eric up to kind of address that as the build out plans. But before he speaks, just want to say that as we build out, we've actually already started laying down the background fiber. And so as we come through pretty much all the subdivisions that we've talked about, we've met with your city a few times. So most of the green brown fields we've already taken into account in our business case. But I'll let Eric elaborate on that a little more.
Hey, good evening. Thank you. So we're in the process of just getting our permits back on the 4.2 miles of transport fiber we have to build to get to Wellington. And then once we get into Wellington, it'll be the south end of town. It's really, we're coming up Highway 1 with our fiber, and then whatever we pick up, we start our backbone build in the south end of town. And we anticipate that we could probably begin to turn up as many as 1,600 addresses before the end of the year.
And that's installing into already built homes here, or is that going into the new builds?
Into the already built homes.
Perfect.
Yes.
I think that is my generalized questions as far as that. I like that it's a 10-year agreement. Thank you for answering my question related to the 5%. It would have been wonderful if it was 5% of $121 million. But I guess we'll settle for whatever people buy here. I had to Google it because I was curious what your guys' revenues were. but I just have feedback, but no additional questions as far as the contracts related. I'm grateful that our residents are going to have an additional opportunity to have working services here. My others are just comments after the question period.
Perfect, thank you. Trustee Gator? No, no response. Okay.
Nothing on my end, sorry.
Oh, there we go.
Sorry, still getting my sound set up, but no.
Okay, thank you, sir. Yeah, I like the agreement, the way they set up it, crafted well. I think the grant, that's a huge step forward for the town, something that we're in dire need of. So that can be utilized really well. That's something we move forward with, you know, and I really appreciate the work that's gone into it. With that being said, I don't have anything further for you, and I think the board's set up so we can, I don't know, what do we want to do, guys? Just move forward with it and
Absolutely. I do got one quick question.
Yes.
When are you going to look at having the whole town covered? How long is that going to take?
Actually build forward, so our plan is to get transport backbone built entering the town. Will be about, like I said, about 1,600 passings, which are mostly residential by the end of 2024. And then we have a build forward plan through all of 2025 and I think into early 2026.
Okay, stupid question. Okay. I live over on the east side of the road.
So we moving on.
Okay, so you got to bury new cable and all that over there too. So you are going to be going across people's land into the easements and that.
Yeah, we'll
type
use
stuff.
the right of way, the public utility easements. If we have something that falls outside of easement, that's part of us staying close with the town and working with you, but we follow the same path as other utilities.
Okay, thank you.
How about timelines associated with our facilities like water and wastewater treatment centers
As far as permitting,
about for service?
it depends on where they are in relationship to the direction we're building through the town.
Okay.
So if there's an immediate need, we're certainly, open to talk about it. If there's something we can pick up along the way or accelerate our build to service something faster, we'll do our absolute best.
Yes, please.
Part of the negotiations, that was one of the points, making sure that the wastewater and water centers would be served, so.
good question.
So when you say that's still under negotiation though, so timeline wise or, okay. Okay, okay. Perfect. Okay, thanks.
Perfect. I mean, nothing further. We good? I think it's a beautiful presentation. We appreciate you guys coming, giving the information you had. Yeah, and you had some more
Can I-
questions?
Just feedback, no more
Okay.
questions, just kind of highlighting, I really appreciate how this contract was wrote out. I love the fact that within 90 days of written notice, every 2 years, there can be performance evaluations conducted and the public is allowed to attend those. I think that was huge for having the resident feedback on how they're enjoying their service, what's going on related to that. I know that some other providers we have these agreements with, there's not a lot of recourse when it comes to being able to be a public person having an issue with your internet or your cable TV, and you can't air your grievances, so to say. So I really like that that is in this contract. I appreciate the parental control devices that are required to be offered to subscribers. So families can actually request a control mechanism to help keep our kids from not watching what they can't access or shouldn't be accessing. The cable drops are required to be completed within 1 week after install. And I don't know if that is anything that has affected anyone on this board, but I saw a wire sit out in front of my house for close to a year before someone came around and buried it. So I think it's awesome that you guys have laid out the stipulation and expectation. I get it. If there's freezes, there's going to be delays, but I like the generalized idea that everything a resident wanted to know about your Comcast service is available in this agreement, down to customer service expectations. The TV reception, the speed that was requested or asked about, the guaranteed speed and whatnot for cable, it's laid out on page 62. It's what their experience and what customers can expect to experience. Yes, I read the whole packet. But I wanted to see, and it makes me want to further explore what our other franchise agreements look like, because it makes me wonder if maybe these things were agreed to and we're just not, residents don't know they have a recourse in looking up and seeing if they're supposed to be having the same kind of customer service that is being delivered. So I think it's great to have all of this expectations so very well laid out. So
Thank you.
thank you very much.
So I'd like to thank Zach. We have been meeting since August of 2023, I believe, trying to come together, working on the agreement. We brought Brandon on not too long ago in order to negotiate the agreement for us. We've heard some really great things out of the town of Severance. They are deploying in Severance, and our engineers have been in contact with their engineers to talk about what that process looks like. And of course, working with Comcast as well. It's been very helpful. Brandon has been a huge asset, and as Trustee Teets stated, we need to be looking at our other franchise agreements. So we're hoping that we can move forward this year in getting those franchise agreements reviewed, and with the help of with Brandon, in order to get that information before the Board of Trustees as far as renewals or updates or whatever that looks like. So looking forward to getting that done in 2024. So thank you to Comcast, to Brandon, for the whole team, because this is a huge project and something I think our residents really look forward to and really need.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a big step for Northern Colorado, and you guys investing in these smaller communities, taking the time to do so, I mean, is huge for our region.
No, we appreciate you trusting us to be your service provider. Severance will be completed, the first part of that project, by mid-year, and we're building into Milliken Mead as well. So we're pretty
Awesome.
excited about it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say one more thing about our partnership with the town. We've already partnered with the Boys and Girls Club just down the street.
Yeah, step on the mic, yeah.
Absolutely. Again, Zach Rothmar with Comcast. Just want to say we are looking forward to partnering with the town. We're not just here to put our drops in and leave. We've already partnered with the Boys and Girls Club. We have a great partnership with Weld County, Larimer County, as far as those go. So we'll be up here. We filled the PSA at the Boys and Girls Club a couple months ago. Unfortunately, some federal law changed with that, so we're kind of working on some B-roll to see what we can do with that. But it's been our pleasure to be up here, and just thank you for the time. Thank you, Brandon and Feldman Associates now. There's some rebranding over there. I'll get it one of these days. Yeah.
There you go.
But just do appreciate your time. Your city's been great to work with, and as well as the surrounding towns. So we're here to stay. We're not just gonna, drop our stuff and leave. So appreciate the time.
Awesome, thank you.
you.
Okay, well, this moment, we can take a recess for about 10 minutes and then go back into our meeting at 6:30. All right, now call to order the February 27th, 2024 Board of Trustees, a regular meeting, time being 6:30 PM. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Clerk, make it a roll call, please.
Trustee Daly,
Present.
trustee Mason,
Here.
trustee Teets,
Here?
trustee Wiegand,
Here.
trustee Gator,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald, Mayor Shosse.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Are there any amendments to the agenda this evening? Any conflicts of interest with the agenda this evening? All right, now it's time for public comment. Members of the public wishing to speak, you'll be given 3 minutes. State your name at the podium for the record. All right, no public comment. All right, I will now close the regular meeting and open the Liquor Licensing Authority Board, time being 6:31 PM. Mr. Clerk, make a roll call, please.
Trustee Gator. Trustee Daly.
Present.
Trustee Mason.
Here.
Trustee Teets.
Here.
Trustee Wiegand.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald. Mayor Shosse.
Here.
Thank you. We still have a quorum.
Thank you, sir.
I just wanted to quickly clarify, because this is quasi judicial, I'm not supposed to participate, correct?
That's correct, Trustee Gator.
Thank you.
Okay, so the only item before us this evening for the Liquor Licensing Authority Board is on the consent agenda. Mr. Clerk, will you please read item D1A?
D1A, consent agenda, come and go DBA change application.
Thank you, sir. Do I hear a roll call on this?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Mr. Clerk, make it a roll call, please.
Trustee Daly.
Yes.
Trustee Mason.
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand.
Yes.
Trustee Teets.
Yes.
Mayor Shosse.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously and the item is approved.
Thank you. I now close the Liquor License Authority Board and reopen the regular meeting, time being 6:32 PM. Now we will have a presentation from Miss Laura Walker with Larimer County Human and Economic Health. Miss Walker. Oh, you're fine. No rush.
For your patience.
Technology is a wonderful friend most of the time. Okay, so it appears I'm able to share my screen. So there we go. Wonderful. So thank you all for having me here at your meeting. I am Laura Walker and I serve as the Human and Economic Health Director for Larimer County. And at the moment, I'm also serving as the interim director for our Behavioral Health Services Department while we are looking to fill that vacancy. So we had a presentation at our Behavioral Health Policy Council meeting a couple of months ago, a month and a half ago. And Trustee Wiegand was there and had made a request that I bring the same information to this group, this elected body, to make sure that everyone has awareness around the work that Behavioral Health Services is doing to improve behavioral health in the county. So that is the context of my being here tonight. I do know that I confirmed with your clerk that in your packet is the executive summary of the report I'm going to be covering today, as well as the full report, which is more than 20 pages. So either of those documents can be a good starting point for anyone in the public who might be interested in finding those documents in your board packet today. So we began the behavioral health journey in the county in 2018 when a ballot measure passed for a sales tax of 0.25%. And we then developed the Behavioral Health Services Department in 2019. But a precursor to even having that ballot initiative be considered by the county's voters was to do a study of really, you got a lot of anecdotal stories in those days about people that weren't getting their behavioral health, mental health needs met by the services that were available in our county. But we decided that commissioning a study from an outside entity was really a more validated way to confirm the stories that we've been hearing about the lack of some of the services that people desperately needed. And so we called that the Community Master Plan for Behavioral Health, and it became a cornerstone of the talking points that the grassroots initiative that went out and tried to convince voters that this was a good idea since the measure had failed in 2016, coming back with better information for the public It really was and that document, so I think I said it was 20+ pages for the full report here. That document with all its appendices was over 200 pages. It was very thorough, just to make sure that we knew what we were asking the voters to support and showing them why the need was there. So we have taken the 20 years of this tax and broken it into 4 phases. And so phase 1 has just closed out at the end of 2023 with a lot of successes, mainly, as you can see on the first slide here, the opening of that facility, which we are so proud of, to be able to serve those who are in crisis. And it's really self-defined crisis when it comes to behavioral health or substance use disorder. And so we also knew that we shouldn't rest on our laurels and that we should be continually taking a look at the landscape and make sure that we are serving future needs as they arise. The pandemic threw a big wrench into a lot of systems, and behavioral health was no exception. So we went ahead and decided with some other partners that the county should commission basically a redo of that original study that was done in about 2016, 2017. And so we're calling it Community Master Plan 2.0. Let me get to my next slide here. Oh, it's not doing that. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. Yes.
Would you want to open that in either PowerPoint or PDF?
I think I got it now. I apologize. Sorry.
You're fine.
Technical difficulties. So need to put this into slideshow mode. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. So,
We'll need to reassign your screen.
Oh.
I can help you if you'd like.
I might need assistance. Let's see. Maybe not.
Oh, getting there. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, thank you. You can see there's a reason I'm not with our IT department at the county, and I'm doing this work instead. So thank you for your patience. So I wanted to go through the process that we went through with the board to let you know the foundations of how we got this 2.0 version of this report. And so we did commission Colorado Health Institute to do the study for us. We had external help the first time around, and we felt it was really important for a third-party entity that had a strong basis in research and evaluation to do the study instead of just trying to collect the data ourselves from the county's perspective. And so the methods that Colorado Health Institute was using, they did a research plan. They went through a quantitative analysis because, as I think everyone who's listening knows, we have a lot of data in this community. It's not necessarily always synthesized in the way that we need it, but there are lots of sources of data. And so rather than, again, reinvent the wheel on doing too much surveying or too much data mining, CHI was trying to use what we already had. They also did a literature review, again, of the things that already existed about issues in behavioral health in our county. But then they took that information and decided to interview a number of key informant stakeholders, did do some surveys, but they were very targeted to the things that they thought were missing in the existing data set. And then also engaging experts in the field to make sure that what they were doing was up to snuff research-wise. So from that study, which took about a year, about 10 or 11 months for them to do all that background data, they produced for us 14 different recommendations. Now, keeping in mind that behavioral health services as a department within the county system has multiple purposes to it. One of them obviously is to manage the sales tax revenues as they come in and make sure that they're getting applied in the most effective way possible to alleviate some of these issues. But it's also to be conveners of the rest of the community, because behavioral health as a large system is going to take more than one entity to fix. And so you'll see as we go through these recommendations, there are a number of things that are going to take more than one organization to put efforts towards to try to help these issues. So starting here, the most important, and I don't know that these are in order of priority. I sometimes think that they are, but CHI told me that it wasn't necessarily that way. It's at the front of my mind because the opening of that Longview facility is so new. And because I'm more directly in charge of it right now, it's on my mind a lot. And so facility evaluation is a number one for me, to make sure that the investments that we made in building that facility and staffing it are really getting us where we needed to go for those issues. The second one is interagency collaboration. We saw this actually in the first go round of this study as well, is that siloing is so easy to happen in these kind of large systems, especially when they're driven by the payer source that a client walks through the door with, rather than maybe the collective of what's best for the entire community, and ensuring that that continuum is strong throughout the different phases of how services are delivered. The third one is youth services. And I think when Commissioner Shattuck McNally and I came and visited with this board several months ago, this came up as well, that, we're hearing this from our partners at the school districts. We're hearing it from primary care providers who are doing the medical side of healthcare for these young people. But the pandemic was not kind to the mental health profile of our youth. And there are other populations that have been hit harder than what you might call the average person, but youth services needing more supports was definitely called out in this study. The next one is care coordination. Again, that's a repeat from last time, reinforcing that there are a lot of great providers in our community to provide these mental health services. What's missing is you've got a family or an individual who's in the midst of crisis and doesn't know where to go next. And so really walking alongside people, not just giving them a phone number or a pamphlet for the next level of service, is really important. And so focusing on that is going to be critical for us as well. Having crisis alternatives, which was a big driver for the Longview campus and the acute care facility, because we knew that law enforcement, emergency responders in our jail and our emergency departments were taking on way too much burden for people that truly had a core issue of a mental health crisis going on, and less of a focus on physical well-being or even the criminal charges that might sometimes come along with that. Impact fund grants. We have been discussing for a year or two now, how do we take this program, which infuses at the moment $2.8 million per year into the community for providers to fill these gaps. And so we have a wide range of providers. We have some very small independent therapists. We have large systems like Summit Stone Health Partners that receive some of these funds. The issue with that is that they're set on a 12-month cycle right now. And we know that especially if someone's going to build a new program, if there's going to be sustainability there, it's difficult to staff up for a 12-month period and then potentially lose your funding. So we're looking at that very seriously as an alternative for the future. CMP implementation, so that's the community master plan itself. We did not have this embedded the last 5 years, where there was a targeted or specific effort to have the sponsors that had come together at the beginning come back on a regular basis, and Colorado Health Institute is recommending annually, for us to make sure that we're on track with the things that are recommended in this study, and that somebody's taking note, that it doesn't just sit on a shelf for another 5 years and then we redo it. So that's going to be really important as well. I talked a little bit about vulnerable populations as far as our youth goes, but adult-focused programs, which is it's a bit of a misnomer, because it doesn't just mean, people that are aged 21 to 55. It actually means that there are certain pockets of vulnerable populations within the 18+ population, including our older adults who experienced really enhanced isolation during the pandemic, which has not been helpful for their mental health profile as well. But it's to make sure that as we see, look at the suicide rates here. I was actually very surprised by these statistics, how high some of the suicide rates were for populations that I thought wouldn't be as subject to that risk. And so again, customizing for who you're speaking to is the only way that you're going to have people really embrace treatment and follow through and keep coming back. Another spotlight that CHI brought out was alcohol use. You know, we talk a lot about with substance use disorder, people talk about, I see our friends from the sheriff's office back here, you know, but the fentanyl crisis that's going on, you know, the opioid issues that we've had. Trustee Mason sits on our Regional Opioid Abatement Council and has been hearing a lot of the stories of the issues that that class of drugs has caused. But CHI thought it was important to call out alcohol use just because it is a major driver of some of these behavioral health issues. And it's not necessarily the first thing on our list when we talk about substance use disorder. So with the youth-focused programs, not only are we seeing there's a gap in inpatient availability for treatment, so actual beds for kids to go through a longer-term crisis stabilization, withdrawal management, or longer-term residential treatment of some other kind. There's really a push here from CHI to do more home-based and school programs. And so looking at the potential for locating clinicians like in public school clinics, if we can wrangle that, that would be a great way to get to a lot of these kids, but also thinking about telehealth and some of the other things that came about because of COVID. There's always some silver linings in these things. And for me, that was one of them, that there were a lot of successes for young people being able to connect to therapy services virtually. Workforce, we know, is an issue in many, many industries in our area. We just don't have enough employees for a lot of different businesses that exist here, especially because it's expensive to live in Larimer County. And so workforce supports and doing as much as we can to improve the compensation profile as well as the experience for clinicians. I will say that it's an objective that's at the front of mind for myself and for my partners at Summit Stone who are operating the acute care center. We really want that to turn into a center of excellence in regards to allowing people who are moving through an educational program for behavioral health to have hands-on opportunities to do some of their clinical training work at that facility. And so support them in getting into that work, whether they stay in our community and do the work here in the county or scatter back to the other parts of the country that we know they might come from. Underserved communities, I think this is something that all of you as elected officials hear a lot, is that there are a lot of public facing and other kinds of services that people really need. And those underserved communities are just not accessing them at the same rate as other individuals. And so maintaining that focus was something that CHI wanted to make sure was part of this list. Number 12 is a big one for me too. Affordable housing. You know, there's one position in my group of programs at the county that is focused on this, that evolved out of the emergency rental assistance program and the additional funds we got federally from that. But I didn't even realize how big this issue was to solve until I started having a person working right outside my office door that's dealing with this day in and day out. And so, again, it's one of those things that no one entity is going to fix this problem. But it is a cornerstone also of people feeling stable enough to be able to continue treatment until they're well. Community connection, we've talked about isolation both for youth and older adults, but continuing to find opportunities to bring folks together, because the peer-to-peer model for both counseling and just general social supports is a very strong indicator of somebody getting well if they've had these kinds of issues. And then the last one, I think we've come a long way in my estimation of people feeling like it's okay to not be okay. I've seen stickers that even say that were passed out during the pandemic, I think. But trying to reduce the stigma for people to come and get the proper care that they need for their behavioral health issues, just like they would for medical. Nobody's embarrassed to limp into the doctor's office to get a splint on their leg. They shouldn't be embarrassed to walk into a therapist's office to get help for anxiety or some other issue either. So on the affordable housing, I don't know why that came in there. Sorry about that. So there were a number of additional challenges that have an impact on the success of people participating in behavioral health services that didn't rise to the level of that 14 targeted list, but wanted to acknowledge that CHI found these issues. They find them in every community, but they found them in ours as well, which is not a surprise. So just to wrap up, and then certainly take any questions that the board would like to ask of me. But I wanted to let folks know that while Larimer County commissioned this study and paid the cost of the contract with CHI, we also had sponsorship level partnership with Summit Stone Health Partners and the Health District of Northern Larimer County, who were providing some other in-kind services, and certainly have been very well invested and stayed at the table the whole time that we've been doing this work, and they'll continue to be by our side.
Perfect. Thank you. Trustee Daly, you have anything?
I always appreciate the work that you do, and I hate it when I sometimes sound critical, but I always want to introduce it that way too, because I represent the town of Wellington, the people who live here. But everything that you mentioned, the new study and those items, I as a non-professional in that area, I obviously don't have all the information I need, but on the surface level, I understand and agree with every single thing that you just said. I mean, those are the things that are present and we see commonly in all the youth-based surveys that we see out of the school district, from the Boys and Girls Club, the common themes, and they're resonating, of course, in everything that we saw in that survey, in your study, excuse me. First thing I want to mention is the in-school health clinic. We received, and when I say we, a grant was received in order to do a study whether or not Wellington Middle High School was a good location for an in-school health clinic. It was deemed to be very much needed, but those plans have stalled for a variety of reasons. So the thought that you guys have acknowledged that, and that's important. I just want to put on your radar that Wellington has already done community surveys, student surveys, targeted specifically for the use of in-school healthcare clinics for mental health and physical health, sports, physicals, doctors on hand in the school. And it was resounding, like how much support there was for that and the need that was there. So I do want to note that Wellington Middle High School is a great location for any kind of additional investment in the in-school health clinics. And we need help because, like I said, it's stalled. So the other thing is care coordination and the importance of that. I do want to talk about that because when I attended the State of the Youth Conference with Poudre School District and every and any entity within Larimer County Poudre School District that supports youth for mental health, it was amazing because we got in small groups, and as we talked through problems, there was someone in every single group that could acknowledge part of that, but we weren't working together, or there was a lot of things that were prohibiting working directly with school districts and those kind of things. There's just so many providers doing so many wonderful things, but the coordination is what's missing, or maximizing their services through the coordination. So I love that you acknowledge that. You guys have acknowledged that as one of the core issues. Wellington continues to be restricted by transportation and public transportation to the new campus for Longview. And that will continue being a problem until these type of services are better distributed throughout the district or throughout the county, excuse me. I just thought of the Northern Colorado Hills District in my head. So, but as I have always brought that up, I will continue to do it, that we lack that support in Wellington. And even those people who are not prohibited by transportation concerns, it is at the 45-minute to an hour drive each way to get there. So it is not convenient. It is not conducive to seeking help that's already hard to get. So I have to notate that in past conversations, there was questions of whether or not satellite locations or mobile support would be provided. We have, again, with care coordinations, organizations within the town of Wellington who are seeking to provide support or locations or facilities to house Summit Stone, to house more Larimer County services. And I know they've received impact grants, which they're limited by month or year, and that's gonna be a major issue for this project as well. But considering that there's already organizations in the town of Wellington, the community services, the Community Service Center with Grace Village is our nonprofit that has received the impact grant of $500,000 from the town, from Larimer County. Thank you. I am concerned about the time limit, but I think there could be more done given the high need and lack of services available to the town of Wellington. So I'm $500,000's not a little amount, but I mean, they need capital investment to actually make things happen and work for us to be able to provide services in the near future. So I just urge Larimer County and anybody listening to support those efforts within our community. I mean, they're in active fundraising mode right now, and they need our support to get moving, just to coordinate with Summit, to coordinate better with Larimer County. So, but I'd love to see that you guys are changing the impact grant, because I hate the fact that they were able to receive that, but based on other limitations would lose it, right? So, that was one of the things. And my family had the privilege and unfortunate situation of having to use Longview for crisis support. I was gonna keep it together. But the coordination with Peter School District and the campus was amazing. So they really coordinated it well. It was a great experience. So I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Very glad it was there at the time your family needed.
But that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Trustee Mason?
Ms. Walker, really appreciate you being here, and wonderful presentation you put together here. I know obviously the mission that you guys are on is very important to all of this community, and certainly this board, and certainly the partnership that we have with you guys as far as the Opioid Abatement Council goes. Really appreciate that relationship we've got, and we want to obviously keep those things going. I know even for myself, in 2020 when COVID first came around, that sort of thing. I know certainly, I was kind of put in a place that going through some hard things, that sort of thing. So I just really appreciate the mission you guys are on here. And I did want to echo the same concerns that Trustee Daly brought up, which is transportation to the town of Wellington. Obviously, that's going to continue to be a big sticking point for folks that need those services. So I just want to make sure that that's something that's on your guys' radar. And but definitely appreciate you being here tonight. So.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
My apologies for being tardy, and thank you so much for your presentation this evening. These services are really important for growing communities, not just in Wellington, but across Larimer County. So thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Wiegand?
Appreciate your presentation. The main thing we need to consider here is the services are still being designed. I mean, it's a brand new operation, and they're going to be tweaking it and doing quite a bit of stuff, and it's just not going to do anything but get a lot better. And one thing too, and I know transportation is a big thing for Wellington, but before the location was open, I think you had to go to Greeley or a few other places a lot farther away. So, at least we got a central location now, and, transportation can be worked out. So, thank God that we got what we got. So thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Teets?
I appreciate your presentation. I was trying to figure out, I know that this is Larimer County dollars, and I don't know, luckily Trustee Wiegand sits on this, or you'd probably have a lot more questions in your meetings. I am curious. So we have, if you look at your statistics that you published here, I would assume the 25 to 54 range where we're seeing that huge uptick in 2022 as far as related to suicide rate, which goes along with mental health. I assume that statistically these are working people that might not have a possibility to actually get off work to go into counseling sessions, items like that. Do you feel that this is any way correlated to the lack of ability to get mental health care?
I would say that's definitely a factor. We did get a little bit more depth of detail from CHI in a more, well, it was like an appendix that had a lot of their data sets in it. And actually the biggest contributing factor for that particular age group was drug overdose deaths,
Got it.
which became classified as suicide.
Got it. And then I noticed 65 to 75 plus, which this one hurts my heart because that's a 45% in 2022. That is a very big number, which what brings me to my curiosity, and this is something you guys can possibly discuss among when you have meetings, but we have two age group gaps. We have teenagers that need that assistance, and we have seniors who also need this assistance. We have a senior van here in town. Are our seniors able to be transported for counseling services into town with our senior van? Or other riders that might possibly want to, we pay for the senior van. Is it in use all of the time? Is there a possibility of maybe discussion and figuring out if that van can help with additional transport from Wellington to mental health?
So that's something that would be part of like the senior center budget and the things that we put our money into.
Right.
I know they do use the van, I think twice a week for doctor's appointments and things of that nature. So they can access healthcare with that. I don't know about crisis situations. That'd be something that if we wanted to address that, we could do so. Maybe talk about that in a work session or something.
Yeah.
For sure.
Or just standard mental health visits. If you see a counselor once a week, if they have that opportunity to regularly schedule those visits, and we have a van that we pay for if the senior center needs some additional funding for gas or whatnot. But this might be something that is definitely worth the discussion of. It might help the answer of, because a lot of the seniors, 75 plus probably are not transporting themselves to and from town here. So it would definitely be something that I would like to hear more on if there's opportunity for additional transportation. We already have the van. I know we have service providers here in town that provide counseling and mental health awareness, but to be able to have those services that are Medicaid available, and it's not cheap, that's for sure. So, yeah, but other than that, I love your presentation. That was my only idea of funding might be an option for assistance.
Thank you. Trustee Wiegand?
Can you give us a breakdown of services already rendered since it's opened up?
Oh, the
Roughly.
array of services at the acute care facility?
How many people you've served?
Absolutely. So I actually just got an updated number from Dr. Brooks. She is our medical director for Summit Stone out at that facility. And she and I met yesterday, and they've served over 1,200 people since December 2nd. And that was as of maybe 2 or 3 days ago for her to collect that data. The array of services includes urgent care, which is both medical and behavioral health assessment of people when they come in. So barring somebody having a condition that requires full emergency department, like, they're having heart issues or they can't breathe and those kind of things. But minor medical care is part of the array of those urgent care services, as well as the assessment of their behavioral health status. Then we move into the potential for 23 hours worth of observation, which can be both for a crisis of a mental health condition or withdrawal management for overdose, or, when it's not life-threatening and requires the emergency department. Then we go into crisis stabilization, which is you get checked in and you're an overnight patient at that point. That can go for up to 7 days to have people stabilize from that. And then there's also medical and non-medical withdrawal management that goes longer than that 23-hour observation period, again, for maybe 5-7 days. The vast majority of people in that overnight withdrawal management are usually gone within 48 to 72 hours. They're better enough to be discharged back into the community and hopefully have a plan for how they don't show up at our door again.
Last question. Do you have the kind of breakdown of, as far as the walk-ins compared to the people that's brought there by the police or other
Yeah.
type organizations?
I actually just looked at a draft of an annual report for 2023. So this would have just been for that first month of service. It's not necessarily inclusive of the last maybe 6 or 8 weeks. But 77% of people were coming in on their own, not being brought by emergency responders of any kind. However, the caveat there too is that Summit Stone, in conversation with ambulance providers, with law enforcement, did ask for them to kind of have a soft launch on bringing people in until they had a chance to organize their staff, get their workflows moving, just so they wouldn't have an onslaught, maybe like on day 1 or 2 into the facility. So I expect that 77% number will go down, and there will be a higher proportion of people in the long run that get brought by emergency personnel for service there.
Thank you. Trustee Gator?
Yes, I did have a couple of questions. One question I had is you talked about working towards getting more of a presence within the school system and counselors in school. And kind of my question is, when you're working with the youth, how are you guys, incorporating parents or guardians into that process, and at what point?
So the school system, if youth are being seen for either medical care or behavioral health care, my understanding in the clinic setting would be that there would at least be notification to the parent that a child had received those services, if nothing else, but to make sure that they're billing the proper insurance source, whether the child has Medicaid coverage or private insurance through their parents. I actually am not an expert to tell you the amount of information that would be shared with a parent or guardian about a youth. But I imagine there would at least be the awareness raising that a child is being seen at that school clinic.
Trustee Gator, I have lots of information on this and how it's currently functioning at Centennial High School. So I'd be happy to share that information with you, including reference to Colorado law, which is primarily what makes these considerations. So I'd be happy to share that too, just because I've been involved in the in-school process and I have all the data from the Centennial High School in-school
Perfect.
clinic.
The second question I had is, did you have any ideas? I know obviously when we're looking at the numbers of the suicide rates, the 75 plus was definitely the highest number that was up there. Did you guys have anything as to showing what is driving those numbers to be that high?
So the isolation piece, we suspect over the last several years has really exacerbated the number of folks. It also was very difficult for people to even get out to essential medical appointments because all of the people in that age group were considered high risk just by their birth date for COVID. And so there were lots of lapses both in physical care and behavioral health care for that population because of the fear of going to a doctor's office and leaving their home and going out in the public. Those are not necessarily causal, but I think they're correlated issues to why we saw this increase. There was also a fairly significant proportion of those two last older age groups that were also veterans.
Okay.
So it's another complicating factor.
And I know that I'm not, excuse me, sorry. I know I've heard a lot about issues with veterans, especially having challenges with PTSD and other things that have led to higher suicide rates. Is there anything that the county is doing specifically to work with veterans on that? Are we working with the VA and other organizations on that, or how's that functioning?
Yeah, so our Veteran Service Office, which lives in my service area as well, is very attuned to these needs. And we actually, last fall, we helped sponsor an event at the Lincoln Center that was really a resource fair for both families and veterans themselves. And I would say 50% of the curriculum, it was like breakout sessions that people could choose where they wanted to go, but more than half of them had a behavioral health support kind of a theme to them. We had a session on gun safety where we would offer gun locks to families and to veterans so that they could keep their firearms safe and maybe delay the notion of utilizing those when they're having some kind of a crisis. And there were also a number of panels where we had veterans who had gone through behavioral health services with success. And we had the VA there too to explain how people access those services without having to drive to Cheyenne necessarily to be seen. And so that was one inroad that we made, but our Veteran Service Office is very aware of this issue and has been doing a lot to raise awareness in the community and reduce that stigma. We're not there yet, but we're trying.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, leaps and bounds you guys have come with that facility and where you're planning on going, and the services you are going to provide for this county are incredible. Well needed, and for you guys to already serve that large of a population since December 2nd is beyond me, right? And then that's even with a slow launch with first responders bringing people in. And that's I think, smart move. You guys have been smart about this whole process. So I'm just very impressed, and it's something we need and continue to need. And you guys are doing great at getting this started and going for our county. So thank you.
Thank you. And I really appreciate your attention today and the reminders that when we're not talking about Fort Collins centric, there are different needs for every resident in Larimer County, and we won't forget that those issues are real.
Thank you. No. The next presentation we have is going to be Mr. Tim Singewald, going to be giving us the report on the Boxelder Basin Regional Stormwater Authority.
Mershossi. You also have Mr. Richard Seaworth.
Oh, Richard Seaworth online?
He's online.
Perfect. Well, gentlemen, proceed.
Going to zoom in, so I'll introduce myself, Tim Singewald. I've been the representative for the town for quite a while now, I guess. Boxelder started before I got on the Board of Trustees. It's been around for a long time. It was a program to try to deal with flooding. And I'll just give you the 40,000-foot view real fast. Clark Lake was involved in it, and Edson Reservoir, which is east of town here, was part of it. And it was a $12.5 million project with a FEMA grant of $3 million. It was a $9.5 million project. They couldn't find a good spot for Edson Reservoir. All of the benefits that they were talking about are a whole bunch of them. Wellington never realized the overtopping of the roads from flooding, different things like that. It ended up down at Eastside Detention Facility. The program went from a $9 million project with the FEMA grant up to about $32 million. The board for Wellington got very involved in it. Everybody got involved in executive sessions, looking at what was going on, trying to deal with the county and the city to get information from Boxelder on what was actually going on and where was all the money going. Long story short, the trustees stood firm and we put an ultimatum to them, and December 27th, they finally signed a document that pretty much took Wellington out of it and put Timnath in because they were getting all the benefit down there. Mayor Pro Tem Dan Sattler and myself, I was mayor at the time, and Mr. Ed Cannon went to Timnath for a late meeting on the 27th, and they signed the documents. And I think that saved Wellington about $3 million right there, and then a whole bunch of money after that. The project of Eastside Detention Facility had a ton of different problems. A lot of things came up, and it just kept expanding and rolling over, and there were a lot of problems. We've got it all done. We do have an issue now. The whole project's done, but there is an issue with some standing water in the Eastside Detention Facility, and we're having to augment that, or when it's officially done, we pull out of the Boxelder agreement and we go into a maintenance agreement. There's a maintenance agreement for the east side and there's a maintenance agreement for Clark. The augmentation, they're thinking is gonna cost about $650,000 to try and dry up about 90% of the water that's on the surface. The reason there's water on the surface is they dredged out the East Side Detention Facility, and the Brierley report we found out in a lawsuit against the Boxelder reported that there was high water in that location, and that the Boxelder knowingly dug down into that and exposed the water. And it also damaged the landowner there. And they took it to court and they got a couple of $1 million from the Boxelder for damages to their farming operation. In the decision from the court, and this is critical, Judge French found that any further damage that the Boxelder does to the Day Family Farms, they can file a lawsuit against us. We have to pay their court costs and see if they prevail. They're ready to go to court anytime because they'd like to get some more money. We tried to do a deal with them. We wanted to put in an under drain and try and get the water on the very north side out. We did a north-south drain that dried up the water and did a spectacular job. We did not want to go east-west because we didn't want to impact any of the Day's wells that are in that area. We've had a bunch of experts come in. They've done a lot of research. We've had a lot of information given to us in executive sessions. And we had a unanimous agreement of all the board members, county, city, Wellington, the shared members, and Timnath now attends our meetings, even though they're not legally on the Boxelder board. But we were all in unanimous agreement. We weren't going to do anything further because we don't want to get sued again, and they may have a favorable ear with a judge in Larimer County, of this government entity disturbing their property and destroying their wells. We do have a project that we're working on right now that could dry this up 90-some %, and it would be a smaller portion of the east-west. And if this happens and we get this dried up, this thing's done. But it's going to cost us about $650,000. Now, since this is the East Side Detention Facility problem and it's $650,000, why do we want to do it? Well, at the same time, they were saying we're going to have to dredge Clark Reservoir. And that was going to cost, we don't know how much money. So the thought was, I'm of the belief that you got to stop a government agency. When it's feeing people, you've got fees. Your homeowners here are paying $75 a year in fees, roughly somewhere around that amount. And this thing won't die until we actually stop it. However, with the 650 here and maybe $1 million up here on the dredging, we thought, well, if we let this continue to roll for a year or so more, we could do this with fee payer funds coming in, and then we will set up the maintenance reserve on Eastside Detention Facility for $1.2 million, and then Clark Lake for $1 million. My concerns for the town is if something does go wrong and is a problem down there, and they do sue the Boxelder, we're still part of it. I'd like to get Wellington out of it, let them do whatever they need to do, and take the legal liability on it from that standpoint. But since we've got Clark Lake, maybe go ahead and get those done under the fee payer clause so that we're getting funds coming in order to pay for it. Now, the Clark Lake is kind of a gray area. That is surface or bottom of the lake area for North Pooter. This is North Pooter's call. We are required to do the survey of it every 10 years to see how fast it's silting up. We do not have a good baseline on what was dredged out of there. That's been a huge problem, is we don't know where we were, but they feel that we're about 8 to 9% silted in at this point. To do anything on Clark Lake, that's a trigger that North Pooter will pull. And they'll say, we need to do something, or they may not do anything. It's their call. Right now, they're working on a whole different system of trying to get that silt out of the water. And we're thinking a lot of that silt came in due to the forest fires and the water coming down the ditch system. And you can put in a forebay or something like that in order to get that silt to drop out before it gets there. And they've got a new system that they've been playing with, but it may be something that as we develop the area here, we don't need as much crop water. They don't need as much irrigation. It may be a mute thing 10 years down the road. We don't know. They may never call to do anything. So right now, we're in the final negotiations. There's a lot of stuff happening in executive session that I can't really share. But the other thing that I'm looking at for Wellington is if we do spend $650,000 down there on solving this standing water issue, how do we put that into an additional reserve on Clark so that it's fair for the town of Wellington? And that's one of the things that we're trying to work on there too. Richard Seaworth is now the president of the board. We are doing projects on time and under budget. We are keeping people cost effective. I believe I'm the secretary and I'm the final approval on all bills before they're paid. I have to go into bill pay and finalize that and approve them, and then they get to cut the checks, and I don't approve anything unless it's been talked about in a board meeting and has been approved and makes sense. So we've been really drilling down. Richard Seaworth is a heck of a lot more of a politician than I am. I go in like a bull in a china shop and cause problems and beat on the table and scream at people. And he gets in the back door and negotiates with the commissioners and the guys in the county and whatnot. And it's a system that's been working really good for us because we've gotten a lot done. And we've paid off one of our loans in full already. We could pay off another one this year. We are paying off ahead of schedule. By this summer, if this project works, we should be done with this, and it should just be a payout and get these loans paid off and then tell you, you know, you got to figure out what to do with the money. But the other thing that's up is Richard and I are both up for renewal. I've heard through discussions and whatnot that maybe one of us would not be there and you'd put someone from the town in one of our spots. Richard is much more important than I am because of his running this and doing it. I think you'd be foolish to replace either one of us since so much of the stuff right now is being negotiated and handled after over a year and a half of executive sessions of picking up all the tidbits of information from all the different entities that we've had in here giving us input. But that's where we're at. We are right at the very end of this thing. We're standing there on the edge of the cliff with our toes hanging over, thinking we're pretty much done. So we're real excited about that. And Richard, are you there? Could you say anything additional?
No, I think you covered it pretty good. Can you hear me, I assume?
Yes.
Okay. All right. No, I think you covered it pretty good. Um, it's one of these jobs that Tim or I really don't need. It's free tonight. In the last 2 hours, I've had 2 confidential emails from our legal counsel. So we are getting a lot done. I am in hopes that the project we're doing right now is going to dry that up. If it not, we're hoping we can find another way so we stay clear of the days. We definitely don't want to do any damage to them, so we're working very hard to get that done. Otherwise, I really can't add anything. I do worry a little bit about Clark's Lake, but the powers to be, when this was done, did not do a survey like they were supposed to do. They claim they did, but they just can't find the results. Well, I doubt that very much. But so if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer some. It's very difficult right now. Just one of the things we'd like to talk to, we have to talk to another board member, but there can only be 2 of us. Otherwise, you have a meeting. I'm sure the town runs into the same thing. We don't want to call one. We don't want to have that expense. So I end up on the phone with the other board members to kind of keep people included, but some of that you got to really be careful of. So I appreciate that being a problem, and the town, I hope, is getting the services they deserve. We do have, and I have run this by the rest of the board on what we do about the 650,000. And everybody's kind of thinking about that, plus legal counsel's thinking about it, how we can work that out. Because I do want the town to come out ahead on this.
We don't need to come out ahead, just even.
Okay. Well, I don't want them to be taken advantage of. Because you got to realize this $32 million, we're 20 million over the original budget. And you got to realize that 5 million of that, actually almost 6, came from the fee payers town of Wellington. And just think what the people of the town of Wellington could do with $6 million. And I'm very upset about that. You can go back to my voting record on the board. I voted against a lot of this stuff. I was taken off for some time because when I started saying this isn't going to work, why, Steve Johnson, commissioner at that time, says, you just don't know how to play the game. And I said, well, I guess I don't. It's going to cost the people of our town and Larimer County this much money. So I said, I bet you better let somebody on there that understands. But right now, we understand that they've wasted a heck of a lot of our money.
Any questions?
Trustee Daly, Trustee Mason. Mayor Pro Tem.
I don't have a question. It's mostly just a statement. I remember very vividly in April of 2016, when we took our oath of office, the Board of Trustees in that meeting had an agenda item to vote us into the Boxelder Stormwater Authority right before we took our oath of office. And so Mr. Singewald and Mr. Seaworth have been working at this for quite some time. So thank you for your hard work, and thank you for, in the end, it sounds like we're almost out, which was what the goal was in the beginning. So thank
And-
you for all of your
And don't
time.
forget our buddy Lee Tucker, who took both of us out driving around looking at this, and he finally talked us into understanding what this was all really about.
So I appreciate the foresight that you and Mr. Seaworth had on the front end on the mess that the town was stepping into and hanging in there through the Dave family situation. I mean, that was an unfortunate thing that was a continuation of a program that we really didn't want to be in the first place.
Yeah.
So it's exciting to hear that there's potentially light at the end of the tunnel, and thank you for your hard work.
Thank you. Trustee Wiegand.
Thank you for what you're doing. And can you kind of give us an idea how you work with our city people? You know, to have the coordination?
Oh, we've had some meetings with mayor and Patti, town administrator, and then with Bob's been in on 1 or 2 of the meetings, I think. I've met with a lady, I'm I'm old now. I'm in that 75 group, but I'm not suicidal quite yet. But your attorney, you had a water attorney lady, Jennifer, and had meetings with her, and you know, we requested input and guidance, and we'll ask Patti. A lot of times I'll say, here's where we're at. This is what we're looking at doing. How would you like me to address with this? I'd like to do this. And she's usually, yeah, I understand. Go ahead. So we've been in that. And then we met with mayor here, what was that, 6 months ago or so?
Yeah, something like that.
Someone there. So we try and stay abreast of what's going on, but really over the last couple of years, there hasn't been a lot going on, just trying to figure out how to deal with this water that's standing there, and trying to get some of these loans paid off, because if you get them, personally in my life, I don't owe anybody anything. I don't have vehicle loans, property loans or anything. I don't like loans at all. So I think that's a good way to do it. I'm just trying to get these loans paid off quickly. If there's money sitting there, pay off the loan so you don't have an inclination to spend it.
It was 2014.
If I may, if I might add, you'll see that we carry in a pretty good balance right now, but our loans are with the Colorado water people.
Water board.
Water board, and right now they're paying us more on our excess funds than what the loan interest is. So we've got a little arbitrage there. We can pick up some money there for the fee payers. We're hoping they won't have to pay at a later date. So if you look at our financial statements, which is online, that's the reason there's extra money in there.
Then you really should never do an arbitrage. I got in trouble for that once. Made 85 million or $85,000 in 3 days. But that's a whole different thing. Plus, if we pay that off ahead of time, since our project's winding down, there may be other communities that could be utilizing those funds that we've got tied up in a loan, and we're making 0.5% interest above what we're paying. So it's always good to free up the funds. I just like getting out of debt and getting the project closed.
I do. I have a question. So if you guys don't end up running straight north and south and you're going up on the east side, when you talked about staying away from the day's property and trying to get it all dried out?
Right now, if you visualize Budweiser on this side of I-25.
It'll still be days.
The day farm is on the east side of I-25.
Mm-hmm.
And where the golf course is, there's a long dugout area, and that's where the dam is. That's where the majority of the water will be stored if there's a big event. There's a dam down on the south side of that. Where that curls and comes to the west towards Budweiser, right there at 52, I think is the road right there. That is the section where there's water coming up out of the ground and it's setting there. It's like spring action because they've changed, years ago, they changed the Boxelder. They got rid of the river. They ran a ditch up around the east side, but there's groundwater there and it's going under the road there and it's bubbling up through artesian well type pressures coming up. And then it's flowing down, and there's quite a bit of water right there. It's far enough away from their wells that if we just drain that, just a pipe just slightly under the ground down to where our north-south pipe goes, we'll take 90% of that water out of there, 95% of the water out of there. And then the augmentation isn't that much. And then that might not be a large enough number that anybody really wants to worry about.
So from that, my question was, if you guys can't get that augmentation down, will you have to do a different route to try and get that to dry out?
There's other things that you could do, but we think this one will work. Richard's, I don't know how many generations of farmer in the area here, and I've done a lot of this kind of stuff in the wilderness and at my ranch. And we came up with the underground ditch, the French drain to get the water out of there. They want to spend millions of dollars more doing something different. And Richard and I just kept saying, this has got to work. You know, it works everywhere else. Why won't it work here? We got them to try it on the north-south deal and it worked great. And we didn't want to mess with the Days wells.
Correct.
So we held off on the east-west. Days did not want to allow us to do the whole thing, and their document to us had a lot of information in there where they were putting information in there that wasn't really necessarily true, just kind of setting us up for a possible court case. So we're in the position, okay, we won't work with you. We tried to do this, but we're just going to do a little thing here and try and get the surface water off here. And if you want to work with us down the road, we'll be willing to listen.
Got it.
But we're doing this, and it's less than what we wanted, but it should be substantial to where we can live with it.
Got it. And you said someone from Timnath town staff sits in
Yes.
the meetings. Do they go into the executive session or do they only come to the table meeting?
No, at times they're in the executive sessions because they are taking over our position on the East Side Detention Facility. They, on all of the stuff down there, they're paying 25% of everything.
Got it.
They got into this thing. They were smarter than everybody else. They didn't put any money down on this, but they got all the benefit of getting their properties out of the floodplain and being able to make a tax revenue off of it. We don't get any tax revenue off of what we've done up here. We basically took, I think it came out to about 95 properties out of the floodplain along 6 here. And
which is awesome for them and their insurance.
it does work for their insurance, but I
Right.
don't even want to get into it. It's like talking to people that buy land right down by the river.
Right.
Versus up on the hill a little bit.
Is
It's
there,
cheaper, but then you get flooded.
is there a possibility when you guys are wrapping up these negotiations, is there a possibility for one of our town staff to sit in one of those executive sessions and see how all of this is wrapping up?
I don't know. Things have gotten into a really critical phase.
Okay.
You know, I think Patti's been invited in on some executive sessions in the past or not. Sometimes we've had the Larimer County guys get into the executive session, so it's not unheard of, but right now we've been just board members. We've been real careful that it's just the attorney and the board members and the manager of Pinnacle.
That's a great question for Dan. What is the governmental immunity like for a representative for the town if we end up in a law? Like, what are some pro and cons to having a staff member versus a citizen serving in that role if they're working in those sorts of capacities?
I think that's
Sorry for interrupting.
I think that is a fantastic. I think that is a fantastic question that I'd like to evaluate more. I've not been involved with the Boxelder Authority and its mission, and so I'd like to take a look at it and then like to give a report back.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
But I do look forward to getting to see both of you guys finish this out. I would just like to see if there is a possibility of an inclusion for wrapping this up, whether it be Bob Gowing, whether it be Patti Garcia, just someone to kind of watch the finalization to the end of it. I know that I don't know if it answers questions or provides more data so it can be reported back to us, so you don't have to come back and report back. Just something to look into and possibly try and figure out.
I'm retired and I don't have any fun things to do anymore than to come and talk to you. It doesn't matter, but, you know, if, Patty or Bob wanted to set in a executive session, it would, I think Richard and I could talk that over with some of the other board members and see if an invite could go out. The Boxelder board is an entity upon itself that was created by the different city, town, and county. And then we allowed Tim Nath in as a buy-in deal. So I think that gray area has already been addressed a little bit, and I don't think that it'd be a problem getting them in if they wanted to go. But it's like, right now, the negotiations are such that there's so much background stuff there that, you know, I think we've got it done. It just depends upon how the attorney writes it up and how we get it handled.
You know, based on the
Okay.
conversations I've had with Patty, I believe that our staff has the full capacity and knowledge to be able to help support you in those executive sessions. I don't see why that would be out of line to have a staff representative there, since you are an appointed person on behalf of the town. So in the event that something unfortunate happened, like you got hit by a bus, you know, it's good to have that redundancy planning in place. So I would highly encourage you and Mr. Seaworth to see what it would take to have Ms. Garcia participate in those conversations.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it at all.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you, Richard, also for how many years you guys have both spent on this. I've learned a little bit in conversation and nothing compared to where I would probably ever need to be to understand everything that you guys do, but I'm grateful for the conversation and learning. And I remember you discussing the dredging of Clark Lake very profoundly. So I'm grateful for a little opportunity to learn some. It's interesting to me, but I'm grateful for both of you guys for what you have done to kind of help see this through without, I know it costs more money in the end, but at the same time, we at least have someone from Wellington watching out for Wellington, I guess is the best way to look at that.
I would be real careful in a government position to get into these type of deals where you are the minor partner of larger entities, kind of being like the cheerleader going out with the football team and having votes as to who kisses who. You know, it was real ugly at the beginning. It was real bad. We couldn't even get financial information. We weren't allowed it. We were told we didn't deserve it. And we had a fight with lawyers and threatening lawsuits and everything. It was just ugly from day one. We're real excited to see it just about over.
Trustee Gator?
Oh, I appreciate the information that was shared. I guess the one question that I have, and maybe this is a conversation, because I know staff has raised the question of pushing to have maybe one of the positions on the Boxelder board to be a staff member. I don't know if staff could either share what some of those things that we feel could be better handled by a staff member, or if there are areas that you could share that would be more beneficial for us to maintain the two that we currently have on the board. So I know
Let me give you a little more information. Richard Seaworth is a shared position between the county and the town. You would have to deal with the county on replacing him if that was a position you didn't want to renew. If you were not going to renew one of us and it became a consideration, hell, I'll resign. I don't want you to get rid of Richard. I don't have any desire to do this because it isn't fun, but I don't think you want to upset the cookie cart right now at the very end. I think it's well to your benefit to keep Richard and I both in there with our knowledge.
Sure. So thank you. Thank you for the question, Trustee Gator. I think that we may have a solution if we can have some participation in those executive sessions. I think from a project standpoint, we are interested in seeing how this is playing out and any responsibilities or what's happening on the back end or related to the projects. I would recommend that that person would either be Bob Gowing or Nathan Ewert, who is here tonight to listen to this conversation specifically. He is our floodplain manager and knows how these projects work. So I think we've potentially found a solution so that I appreciate the time that both you and Mr. Seaworth have put onto the board, and I certainly don't want to see you removed at the finish line. That doesn't make much sense. So let's see if we can come up with a solution. My goal is just to make sure that the town has some participation, being able to hear what's going on and understand what those next steps might look like. Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
No, I would,
I'm very grateful for the work, Mr. Singewald, you and Mr. Seaworth, and I know, as you mentioned earlier, kind of being a little bit of a bull in a china shop sometimes, but sometimes that's what we need to have in there as that smaller entity to make sure that we're taken care of. So I appreciate the work you guys are doing, and I'm glad to hear it sounds like we have a possible solution to work together with staff to get them the information they need just to make sure that we're moving things along. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
okay, I would like to add that our board meetings are public except for executive session. And I've got things right now I can't even talk to Tim about. So if they come into executive session, whoever's on staff's going to have to be really cautious about what they say. And I can put them into executive session. That's not, I don't think, an issue. But we sure don't want to have a lawsuit come out because somebody's talked about something that didn't quite know all the facts. I mean, Tim and I had emails just this morning on the way this east-west going in that was a misunderstanding between everybody. So that's pretty cautious of what you have to do. And I'm sure the town, you've been through this with executive session. The less people you have, the better off you kind of are. So, but thank you.
Their packets, all their information can be found at boxelderauthority.live. So all of their information, packets, financials, things like that are all included on that website.
Thank you. And then I did have one question.
Yes, sir.
So you're saying what's the time frame that you have for having this thing done in your minds? Do you have a time frame, or is this all just speculation at the moment?
So hopefully the reduced east-west drain is done this winter.
Okay.
While it's frozen. Give us a year to see what kind of water dries up. You usually get a feel right off as to how substantial it is. Then the other thing that you can do is come in and do some grading and maybe pull in a ditch. Getting the water to move faster than sitting there to where they can calculate an evaporation loss. The state says if it is processed quickly to the stream, which
You don't have to calculate
through the pipe
loss.
it does, we don't have to augment for that. But the other point is they forced the construction at that location. They hid the information of the Brierley report. My position all along is this isn't Wellington's problem.
Right. Should have never hit groundwater to begin with.
But we're backing off to try and resolve this and resolve the Clark Lake, but then the Clark Lake kind of dropped out as being an issue. So it would have been good just to stand firm and say, it's not Wellington's issue. This is your issue. If you do something and you get into a lawsuit, that's your issue. You know, the Boxelder's done. We're no longer a party to you.
year and a half then? Is that a?
Best-
We will
best-
know,
Best,
we will
best
know,
case scenario, right?
we will know what's up in a year. Richard and I are out there walking that doggone thing all the time.
And is this the same, this would be the same style of drain that Richard showed me that you guys laid north-south? Okay.
Yes. But in order to pay off the loans, I think we're up to 31, 32, but the growth keeps coming in, and I haven't played with the numbers to project when I think it's gonna play out, but it'll be probably 30, 31 when we don't need to build a residence anymore.
Okay.
But, you know, Larimer County and
But as long as the residents are being billed, this Boxelder stays together, correct?
we have to bill all the residents until the loans with CWCB are paid off.
Right.
And then once those are paid off and in the process and kind of figuring we were going to have some issues that needed to be dealt with, I pushed to start funding the maintenance portion. So we're already funding the maintenance portion for the East Side Detention Facility. They're going to be $1.2 million when it's complete. We're going to be $1 million up here. So we're doing it proportionately. And that has to be fully funded. Then we're done.
So you're
Then,
done before the loans are paid off.
no, the loans are paid off
So,
too.
so the authority will last through 30-31.
Yes.
Okay.
And I assume your legal staff. The other thing is that we passed, or the board prior to our board, like Trustee McDonald stated, signed us into this thing. And they passed the resolution for the fee payer. It is a fee payer for the Boxelder. And I was going back and forth with Brad Marsh that he's got to come up with some wording to figure out what we do as soon as this is done, because this fee on the water bill is specific to the Boxelder fee.
Mhm.
So you should address that well ahead of time, so you're not doing something last minute.
Awesome.
All right,
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm going fishing.
Yeah, do it.
Right. Hope it's
Thank
wonderful
you.
weather.
All right. Next will be the 2023 annual report. Ms. Garcia, the town administrator, will present.
There we go. All right. Thank you, Mayor and Trustees. Patti Garcia, Town Administrator. I put on your dais this nice little document that we're also very proud of. We improve it every single year. It looks better, and as my son would say, gooder and gooder all the time, better and better. So I'm very excited about being able to present this tonight. So this is a broad look at major milestones accomplished this year. So your first couple pages of the report show you all and shows your email addresses, when your terms expire, things like that. And then moving on, we talk about boards and commissions and what these are the appointments that the Board of Trustees makes to the town boards and commissions. Very thankful for this group. I've sat in on a couple meetings recently. I was at the Finance Committee meeting last night and was at the actually the Main Street Board, which is not included on here. It's not a board appointment, but all the work that our boards and commissions do is just amazing to me. The work that goes into that and for the time and attention that they have to make in order to fulfill their duties. So moving on, we move on to town highlights, which showcase some of our activities of 2023. On this page, residents can learn about the grant for the lift station, which was a big deal, a congressional direct funding grant, which they're few and far between. So this was a big deal for us to get that. The change of hours at Town Hall to accommodate our residents, and the online development map, and the very popular budget bonanza. We do talk about that budget bonanza to other municipalities, and I can see that maybe happening other places. They love the idea, and it's a great way to engage our community and our residents. On to the next page, we talk about events that were hosted in 2023, the impact of our amazing library, and note some statistics, such as the number of open records requests, municipal court cases, and the number of minutes spent in Board of Trustee meetings and work sessions. So to this, I want to thank you, because this is a lot of time, and this is just the meetings. This isn't talking about those events outside of these four walls and the boards and commissions that you participate in. And Trustee Teets held a candidate forum, so it doesn't take into account those meetings that you have one-on-one with residents and things like that. So thank you. The amount of time and it feels like it's more than 4,824 minutes. It seems like it should be like 12,000, but I think that's because I'm thinking of being at, the other advisory board meetings and things like that. So I want to thank you all for the time that you give. So the third page highlights some of the great works by Parks and Recreation. As you know, staff is consistently looking for ways to save money on projects. The splash pad upgrade was projected to cost $125,000, but after research, staff found an alternative solution that costs less than $20,000, which equates to a savings of $105,000. This was a big deal, and so proud of our team to really go out there and try to find options. We potentially budget for a project, but once we start working on the project, that's when we start drilling it down and trying to find those solutions. The page also identifies activities at the library that includes the expansion of the programming and upgrades to ADA accessibility. At the last meeting, you got the presentation from the Main Street group about their annual report. Like I said, I sat in one of their meetings just recently, their board of directors meetings, and the excitement was palpable. They were so excited about what 2024 was going to bring, the events they wanted to bring to the town of Wellington, and then talking about working with the rest of the community, not just Main Street, but how can they expand their services and projects and ideas to encompass everyone, not limit it. You will see on the right-hand side of that page, our development activity, talking about total building permits issued and total building inspections, which is huge. That's a lot of work. This is something that our team works on day in and day out. Also talking about the neighborhood services activity. We are tracking that better this year. We have someone new at the helm in neighborhood services, and she is doing a great job of tracking her activities, how much time is taking her, things like that, what those interactions look like based on resident, based on location, just a lot of different things. So we'll have some really good data next year to share with you. This page is for your major capital improvements. We know this is a huge deal. The team in charge has done an amazing job on these expansion projects for the water treatment plant and the water reclamation facility. They have stayed on task. They have pushed our contractors when they've tried to submit change orders that we're pushing back. This project right now is on time and under budget. I knock on wood. I know, I just want to be so careful with that. But really proud of the teams that have been working on these projects. And when I met with the finance committee last night, I presented the same report and I offered up a tour, and they were very excited about that. So we'll probably set up another tour here in the next, hopefully a couple of weeks, probably reach out to Board of Trustees and the other advisory boards to see if they would like to attend, just make it a big group outing on a Saturday and visit both plants and see what that project looks like. So it's pretty exciting. You'll see in the maintenance and operations side of it, the work that Public Works does on a regular basis. I was amazed at the number of street miles plowed for snow and ice control, 1,530 miles, which we do track that. That's a lot of miles. We didn't have a lot of snow this year, so thank goodness, but still, that's a lot of miles that we work on. And that is the end of my report. So I want to thank you, Board of Trustees, for being integral partners in our shared journey towards progress. The report will be shared on different platforms, social media, hard copy, presented to our boards and commissions over the next couple months. So very excited about this and just so thankful for the team that we have in place and for you all leading with that vision and mission for the town of Wellington.
Thank you, Patty.
You're
Beautiful.
welcome.
Okay. Next item is going to be Larimer County Sheriff's giving us their 2023 annual report.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Pardon?
Yeah, right. Where was that picture taken?
That is a fantastic question, Mayor. I will find out for you and I'll report back to the board.
Thank you.
Next month. Again, good evening, board. Sergeant Sherry, Larimer County Sheriff's Office. This is your 2023 Wellington report for the Sheriff's Office. Next year, I'm going to ask that I not go immediately after Patti because her presentation was fantastic. And my numbers are going to seem a little dry compared to that fun presentation. So,
Just pick out the good ones.
yeah. So this is kind of where we're at. Just gotta top of my screen so I can kind of see some of this stuff. So when we look at this report, we're looking at dispatched calls and self-initiated calls. So we're looking at two different numbers. Dispatch calls will be anything that are a citizen is calling into dispatch and they are sending a deputy out based upon whatever that call is. Self-initiated are those calls that our deputies are out driving around and they are acting on whatever they are seeing, whether it's a traffic stop or it's some sort of municipal violation or something along those lines. So we start looking at some of these total numbers. So between the two dispatched and self-initiated calls, we had over 6,000 calls or dispatched incidents, over 2,000 dispatch calls throughout the year, and over 4,000 self-initiated calls that our deputies are acting on. When I start comparing some of those numbers, if there's a kind of a comparing apples and apples, of course, Bertha, I think they're about 1,000 over population of Wellington. They had over 9,300 calls, 3,400 dispatch calls, and over 5,900 self-initiated. They are getting quite the influx of people between the Love's truck stop that really affects them. A lot of bad guys coming in from Longmont, Greeley, those types of things. That's why their numbers are a little bigger than ours. I'm okay with that because lower numbers means lower crime. We're not having to deal with all the different issues that another municipality is taking. I could get rid of this top portion. I can see what I'm seeing here. So these are all of our dispatch calls. What your packet does not reflect, but should show up on the screen, is I highlighted some of the numbers that just kind of jumped out at me. So we're looking at burglaries in progress. Now, anytime you see a 100% increase, it could be we had one call last year and we had two this year. Then obviously that's a 100% increase. So some of these numbers don't really reflect this gigantic jump in crime or anything like that. But some of the burglaries in progress that give me a little bit of concern. Some of the disorderly conduct that was kind of tied back into some of the juvenile activity that we saw over the summer, where some of the kids in the park were running amok and breaking tree breaking tree branches and causing some of those issues. The municipal violations, you'll see, we're seeing more of an increase. It'll be even higher when I get to the next screen. These are just dispatch calls, but in 2021, Jim Lafferty was handling majority of those municipal violations. And since he's not handling a lot of those are resorting to us. So you'll see that in the next screen. Private tow repos. I don't know if you know this, but every month we get the repo companies that come in to repossess vehicles that are not being paid for. Well, they notify us of those repossessions so that it doesn't come out as somebody stealing my car type of thing. They notify us and say, hey, our repo guys are going to be at this location to repossess a vehicle. Don't show up and arrest them. They're just doing their jobs. So that number in 2022 of 1 is not accurate. I think it was about 34. So robberies, anytime somebody sees robbery show up, they're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? You envision the guy in the ski mask, going into the convenience store, that type of thing. And that's not always the case. One of these was a scam where the scammer went into the Family Dollar, tried to buy some gift cards, had them load about $1,000 on gift cards, handed the clerk the money, and then pocketed the cards that were loaded, and then slid some others across the counter, and then swiped the money out of the clerk's hand, and then left the business. So they were able to cancel those gift cards, but that forcible removal of the money from the clerk's hand, that was considered a robbery. So vehicle recoveries, that number of 17, I just want to point out is actually not accurate. It's about 4. And these vehicle recoveries are anything that would be a stolen vehicle that was recovered in the town limits of Wellington. So I did verify some of these numbers because that's like, holy smokes, we're getting 17 stolen vehicles recovered in Wellington. And then that's actually an inaccurate number. I talked about burglaries in progress, and you'll notice that the two rows on the left are a 3-year average between 2021 and 2023, where the 2 rows on the right are a 1-year difference between 2022 and 23. So just kind of highlighting what some of those numbers look like year over year. We start getting into some of our self-initiated contacts, things that we're doing. We're really trying to get back into the bars just to do some of those bar checks, making sure that people are behaving themselves, but we're also looking for any type of liquor violations, over serving, those types of things. You get the person that's sitting at the bar and they're obviously falling off the stool, but yet the bartender is giving them more, that type of thing. So we're looking for a lot of those different violations. So we're trying to get into bars a lot more. Bike contacts, just seem to be contacting more individuals riding around on bikes. And you're like, holy smokes, 1,200% increase in community policing. We were doing this all along, where we were doing some of these special events, whether it's community or coffee with a cop or something like that, but we just weren't capturing that we were actually doing these things. So creating some sort of incident so that we could show, hey, we're out there doing these things. Liquor compliance checks. Myself and Ethan are coordinating a lot with these liquor compliance checks, just making sure that anybody that actually has a liquor license is actually obeying the rules. So we're doing these on-site visits, checking the establishment, making sure they have all their records, everything that they need to maintain their liquor license. And then as you've seen, we report that back to the town clerk when any of these liquor licenses are up for renewal. As I said, municipal violations, at least the 3-year average, I highlighted that's a 20% increase. But you'll notice in 2021, there was 227. That was 99.9% Jim Lafferty. So you'll notice in 2022 and 2023, those numbers really started to increase because we were doing a lot of the vehicles that were parked improperly or too close to this or too close to that. So we're really trying to do a lot of that. And you also notice the parking is about 271% over where we were before. Those kind of go hand in hand between a generalized municipal violation and a parking violation. So they kind of go, as I said, kind of hand in hand. So that was the 3-year average. And then we're just looking at, obviously a 16% increase in our bar checks. It's not hard from 34 over 2, community policing. And I noted that juvenile contacts are up with a lot of the disorderly conduct. As I said, teenagers just kind of running amok in the park. My direction to our deputies over the summer was, I want you getting out in the park and contacting folks and just having conversations. So a lot of that tends to quell a lot of the issues that we find is if our deputies are out there, just hanging out and talking and getting to know everybody.
The kids love pizza.
Yes, they do. They'll
Order from Pizza Palace and then just set it out on the picnic table. They'll come.
Well, I brought popsicles one very hot summer, and I got mobbed. The boxes got ripped out of my hand, and I escaped with my life. So that was a good thing. So this is so I can't see the top of my screen here, but this is just kind of an average over the year. Our busiest months, believe it or not, were January 23, August and September. August and September, they don't really surprise me too much. But days of the week, you would typically see a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We're not seeing that. Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays, and then the busiest hours of the day, 8 to 9. That's usually when we're, making traffic stops or this or that. And then obviously in the evening, you get some of the commuter traffic that are coming home 4 to 5, and then later in the evening, doing bar checks and those types of things, as well as dispatch calls. The graph on the bottom just kind of shows what some of those numbers are. November being our slowest month of the year. This next map just kind of shows I'm not sure what it says on the top here because I can't get this thing to dispatch calls. Thank you. This is more or less just a heat map of where most of our dispatched calls are. Clearly, it's going to be along Cleveland Avenue, 6th Street, Cleveland Avenue, those areas. That's where a majority of those dispatch calls are. You'll see that big red blob on the left side. Well, that's Wellington Middle High School. So we do get quite a few calls out there. And then I highlighted on the right side just kind of what the busier times are: 12 to 1, 141 calls, 4 to 5, 167, and 6 to 7, 135. Top 10 dispatch call locations. Certainly are some of our apartment complexes, Wellington Downs, so Wellington Village, over on the east side of the interstate, where we get most of our calls. I think Wellington Downs, there was one individual in particular that probably prompted a lot of those calls. I shouldn't say fortunately, but he no longer lives in those apartment complexes, so I think things have quieted down just a bit. But certainly Quality Inn, we have our fair share of problems, disturbances, those types of things at the Quality Inn. And then just some of our parks, middle school, and some of our convenience stores. Top dispatched incident, 9 times out of 10, we don't know what's going on at any particular call, so they will just classify it as a suspicious circumstance, and then we have to get there and figure out what it is. We do a lot of welfare checks, and then sometimes people just want to talk to us, so they'll call it a citizen assist. You'll notice animal problems are within the top 4 when we start talking about animal problems. That's quite high on our list. I was very happy to see that fireworks was down near the bottom. I want to get that knocked off of the top 10 list for my own sanity. So this is Some of our self-initiated, we just see where most of our deputies are doing a lot of their contacts. Cleveland Avenue is always very busy. Again, we do a lot of extra patrols out of the Wellington Middle High School every single day. If you're seeing this on your screen and you know where you live, hope there's nothing there. We usually go where it's the busiest, where the most crime is occurring. So that's why you'll see that intensity concentrating on those areas, and maybe not so much in areas where we just don't have a lot of crime. So some of our top 10 officer initiated locations, obviously Wellington Middle High School, 433 self-initiated contacts out there, whether that's an extra patrol, that's a school check where we're getting out and walking through the school. Obviously we want to make sure that it's safe. So come and go, Quality Inn, and some of our businesses. I always want to see our schools in the top 10 for, extra patrols and those types of things, spending time in those areas. High West storage, we've had a number of not vehicle thefts, but stolen parts off of vehicles and those types of things. So we try to spend some time out there as well. That is the end of, I'm sorry. And then obviously top 10 officer initiated incidents, extra patrols, and everybody asks, well, what the heck is an extra patrol? Last night, I've been working the midnight shift covering for one of my guys while he's been on vacation. And anytime that I go through a neighborhood and I'm spending some additional time in there, I will log that as an extra patrol that I spent some time in that particular neighborhood. So we can actually document, hey, we are getting into these neighborhoods and doing these things, but it could also be I'm driving around one of the schools, driving one of the businesses. We do a lot of checks at the Quality Inn, because anytime you have a motel, you have lots of drug activity or this or that wanted people hanging out. So we'll go through and we'll run plates and actively looking for those folks. That is all I got for my annual. Step on the screen there. And then this is the January report. Usually I would just ask you if you have any questions about our January report. If anything, there's anything of note there that you would have any questions about.
I am happy that the woman was able to be picked up off of one of the comments here, that someone paid attention and saw this woman hanging out the window asking for help. So I'm grateful for that one. I'm also grateful to see that we've had 61 sex offender checks for compliance. That's huge in a small town community where we often let our kids wander up and down the streets and hang out with friends and items like that. I'm extremely grateful for the middle school, high school, because that was one thing when we had gotten together and we were discussing adding another officer or not. One of the guarantees from LCSO was they were going to be spending a lot of time making sure the middle school, high school received extra patrols, extra eyes on notice. This is proof that you held true to what you said you were going to do. I'm very grateful for it. Thank you.
Quick question. I don't know if this is the right place to ask this. Grow facilities in a residential neighborhood, legal or illegal?
Growth facilities.
So like somebody's actually growing marijuana in a house in your neighborhood?
It
Not-
depends. It
Okay.
depends on how many plants that they actually have. They're allowed to grow so many plants. Now, if you start seeing in your neighborhood that's, you only have somebody that's kind of showing up occasionally, coming, staying for a few hours and then leaving, that's probably a tender that's tending to plants and those types of things. What some of the larger I wouldn't say larger groups, but whole houses will be rented out and then converted into the entirety of the house, a marijuana grow, where they will run all their own electricity. I'm sure they're getting permits for these things. No, not really. They're not, because what they will gut a house and to run all their own electrical, it becomes a gigantic pain in the rear for the actual owner of the house. They've even purchased the house and then they just converted it, and that's all they use the house for, is to grow marijuana. So
What recourse does a neighborhood have?
well,
in
if you
that
see something
situation?
like that, obviously that's probably well beyond the allowable limit of plants. So if you have an entire house that's been turned into a gigantic marijuana grow, it probably is illegal. There was times where we would work with the electrical company, because if you walked up to the meter with grow lights, it's probably spinning around 100 times a second, whereas a normal would just be kind of creeping. The electrical companies, they don't quite work with us anymore because they were getting sued by some of the folks that were doing these things. So they don't quite, as back in the day, they would report these things if they saw them, but now they don't do that because they're afraid of getting sued. But if you see this in your neighborhood, certainly report it. It doesn't mean that they're doing something illegal in that home, but it's something that we can start keeping an eye on. Try to figure out whether it's legal or not. We may end up, pulling a traffic stop if we can. Talk to that person, what's going on. And if it is much outside of our scope of what we can do, we'll certainly reach out to the drug task force and see if that's something that they can sit on. And I know that the undersheriff has a great deal of experience in dealing with many of these marijuana grows. I don't know if he has anything to say about any of that, but. You're right on. Okay, good.
You see Matt walking back.
You're doing a good
Yeah.
job.
Yeah. But it's a big deal, and we'll drive through some of the industrial parks in Fort Collins in the middle of winter, and you'll hear air conditioning units going, and that's usually a big sign because they're just trying to keep the heat down. But marijuana is a big business. So, and we've had residents in Wellington that have reported, hey, I think my neighbor is selling over here. We'll just get eyes on it. Doesn't mean that we can call our SWAT team in and just kick the door in because somebody thinks something's going on. No, there's this thing called the Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution, and we can't just go kicking in doors without a warrant. So
You have infrared drones too, right? Can they pick up heat signatures?
we do, but there's rules
Yeah.
for drones, especially with law enforcement nowadays. We have rules about where we can fly, where we can't fly, and we don't violate those rules. So we want to keep our drone program. It's hugely successful, and we don't want to have all of our licenses revoked because we're doing a bunch of shady things. So.
It snows and all the houses have snow on the roof and one doesn't.
That one doesn't?
Yeah.
FYI.
I had one more thing to offer, but I'll wait for additional questions.
I'd like to get your feedback on Flock. That's going to be a consideration for a significant investment from the town. So just your candid feedback, and I'm sure they'll come back with numbers and everything when we're actually considering it. But what are your thoughts?
I'm going to be getting with Ms. Garcia to see if maybe next month we can get this on the agenda to have Deputy Zach Anderson come back before the board. I know that he had come to the board during one of our work sessions to kind of talk about Flock and just a real deep dive and that type of thing. So I'm going to see if I can get him. I have an annual report for January for Wellington. But I think that he can really get into the nuts and bolts of that to talk numbers. So hopefully next month I can maybe get that on the agenda. In general, Flock is working pretty well for us. It's nothing like Berthoud. Berthoud has 10 Flock cameras. We have 3. They have them out you know, like by Love's Truck Stop, where they're getting a lot of cars, a lot of, you know, stolen plates, stolen vehicles, wanted people, attempts to locate, you know, if we have a vehicle that runs from us, we get into a pursuit with the vehicle and then we terminate that pursuit. We can enter that plate in to try to locate it off of one of our flock cams. We're still in the testing process though. In fact, we haven't even started the clock for this test because we are waiting on Flock to install the rest of the cameras. We're not even there yet. The rest of the cameras, Wellington's gonna get 3 more, but all of the cameras that we're still waiting for are in CDOT right-of-ways. And because they're in CDOT right-of-ways, we have to get CDOT's approval. I'm not entirely sure why it's taking so long to get those approvals, but
That just thinks that we need the extra, no-cost service provided to us.
well, I love it because it's free of charge right now. Once all the cameras go in, that's when the clock will start. I think it's a 60-day test. And then after 60 days, we'd have to determine, which cameras do we want to keep, how do they get paid for, those types of things. It's not every single day that we're getting a hit on one of our Wellington cameras. I'm looking forward to summer when people are washing their cars and plates are clean and, you know, that type of thing, because it makes it a lot easier for us. Instead of when it's winter and there's snow on plates and plates are dirty and those types of things. But we've been hugely successful in finding stolen vehicles. Heck, we got into a vehicle pursuit with a guy at the McDonald's who rolled in and he just stopped in at Wellington to get a burger. He was driving a vehicle with a stolen plate on it. It was stolen plate, sorry. And we contacted him and then he took off and chased him all the way up to the Wyoming border. But it's things like that. But it's been a hugely successful tool in just trying to find, for instance, we had a family come into the Wellington substation because their elderly grandmother had not returned home. And so we entered her license. Well, of course, we found her plate here at the labor center, or her vehicle here at the labor center. But we could start entering in license plates of vehicles that we're looking for so we can end up locating her. It just so happens that she was with some elderly folks and they got stuck up in the snow up in Red Feather overnight. And the male, he got out of his car and he found somebody and everybody was okay. We got them home, reunited them with their family. So it was an awesome success story. So, but it is a great tool.
And then my only other comment is I kind of miss seeing cars on Main Street since parking's behind the building now. Versus it was always like when you were where the chamber is right now, you'd always see a car right on the corner. So it's very visible from Main Street, like that we have presence for sure.
Okay.
So since the cars are all parked in the back parking lot, we don't see them on Main Street just parked.
Sure.
Right. Not I mean we see them patrolling, doing all those kind of things, but I like it when there's a car just like parked there and you can see it all the time.
Okay.
So I was wondering if maybe you guys could park one on the street or something.
That is something, I think that's a great idea. I kind of like the patrol car being behind the building sometimes, not all the time.
Sure.
Because then it tells people that we're not just sitting at the substation all day.
I see that
espe-
side of it too.
Especially
Yeah.
at night, you know, like I'm working the midnight shift and I've been trying to stay out of the substation
Mhm.
and driving around so that if anybody's looking for us because they're looking to commit crimes, okay, there's no patrol car at the substation, they're out and about.
I see.
Where if I have a lot of paperwork to do, if I just said, I could sit all at the substation all night long and just do paperwork, but then somebody knows that I'm there and I'm not patrolling, so.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
But I will tell you that if we can, we will. If I can just compete with the auction or parking.
Right.
I will certainly
Businesses
do that.
also need parking, so
Yes,
this
indeed.
is a catch-22, but.
But
yeah,
I agree with
I
you.
was thinking of that. Thanks.
Waving aliens that say police station on them to set them out in front of the building.
If I can get an extra patrol car, I can just put a dummy in it something like that. The radar gun in their hand, stuff happens. So be creative. And I have one more thing to add. I talked to Ms. Garcia about this. I was just alerted to this evening before the board started or the meeting started. This afternoon, about 2:00, one of our deputies was driving around by Ice Stone, and he sees a vehicle pulling a trailer down the road. I guess the trailer was dragging on the ground, and I think the front bumper was hanging off, something along those lines. As he prepares to go initiate a traffic stop on this pickup truck that doesn't have any license plates, a citizen alerts him to the fact that this very vehicle had crashed into one of the barricades over by Ice Stone. He finds his vehicle. Turns out that this vehicle had collided with 4 different vehicles on Grand Avenue. Suspect fled from the vehicle. It just happened to be a stolen pickup truck and trailer. The deputy was able to apprehend the suspect, got him into custody, and of course, we had to call out some additional resources to contact the owners of the vehicles that had been crashed into. I don't know the extent of those damages, but this was a win because we got the suspect, and we don't always get the suspect in custody after one of these types of things. But my deputy was observant. He had a citizen say, "Hey, by the way, this guy just crashed into one of the barricades over by Ice Stone." Followed the vehicle, found about 8 blocks of carnage, and then I ended up locating the suspect. But at least letting you know, hey, this happened today. I don't monitor Let's Talk Wellington, but I'm sure that it was all over Let's Talk Wellington. So, but we'd like to make sure that the board is aware of some of these things that happen with where there's a huge law enforcement presence. So,
Thank you very much.
yes, sir.
Next, we'll have the consent agenda. Mr. Clerk, will you please read the titles for the items on the consent agenda?
F1, February 13, 2024, regular meeting minutes. F2, resolution number 2024, a resolution amending fees charged for research and retrieval of public records and amending the town's policy regarding the Colorado Open Records Act.
Do I hear a motion on the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Clerk, make it a roll call, please.
Trustee Daly,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald,
Yes.
Trustee Gator,
Yes.
Trustee Mason,
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
Trustee Teets,
Yes.
Mayor Shosse.
Yes,
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously and the consent agenda is approved.
thank you. Next, we will proceed on to the action items. Mr. Clerk, will you please read the title for item G1?
Resolution number 12-2024, resolution adjusting appropriations for the town of Wellington, Colorado for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2023 and ending on December 31, 2023, and January 1, 2024 and ending on December 31, 2024.
All right, Mr. Don Rhodes, the town treasurer and finance director, will present on this item.
Thank you, Mayor and Board. It's good to be here back before you again this evening. I'll try to keep this short and to the point. What I have for you here this evening is essentially a request for a cleanup budget adjustment here. Normally, I wouldn't bring something like this until we do like the mid-year report. I mean, sometimes there's things that happen in the budget that don't get quite done. And so I do this at mid-year or at the first quarter, but 2 of the 3 categories of items here actually relate to the 2023 budget. So we wanted to get that one cleared up as soon as possible because we're closing 2023 out now, doing the closing entries on that. And at the Finance Committee meeting two meetings ago, this came up, one of these items came up as a topic, and so we wanted to make sure to clear it up. So there's 3 categories. One of them is in the 2023 budget that was, so we're talking about the budget that was adopted late 2022. So this was some time ago. For reasons I don't know, the debt service in the Parks Fund was not included. And so what that What that did was when we finally got to the end of the year and the December report, it makes it look like the park fund is overspent. It's like at 107% or something like that, because this $260-something thousand for debt service wasn't in there. And so it isn't overspent, but for whatever reason, if you go look at the 2023 budget, the line item for debt service is there, but the dollar amount just isn't in the 2023 column. So debt service is everything's up to date, but we wanted to adjust the budget so that when we turn out the final version of the 2023 reports, it doesn't look like that there's an overage there. So that's that first category of item there. The next two are on me. We talked during the budget process quite a bit about some transfers from the general fund to the water and sewer fund to assist those funds in the years 2023 and 2024. Well, the good news is the 2024 transfers made it into the 2024 budget. But when I put together that resolution, that 2024 budget resolution, I should have inserted a piece there to put those transfers in for 2023. And I just didn't. So I know we talked about that a lot, but I missed that going in there. So we're trying to clean that piece up for 2023 as well. And then finally, the third category of item here is, again, related to the parks debt service. Again, the good news is I got the debt service in 2024 budget, but it appears I only got the principal side in. There's a little bit of interest, about $17,000. And this is in the, I don't have a good explanation for that. Just in the rush of the budget crunch, I didn't get the full amount in there. So I'm asking that we adjust the 2024 budget this time for that amount, just so by the time we get to December, we don't run into the same problem where we come up a little bit short. So those are the three categories. Happy to answer any questions about them if you have any.
Thank you. Trustee Daly? Trustee Mason? Trevor Tim? Trustee Wiegand? Trustee Teets?
I defer to Trustee Gator.
Trustee Gator?
Yeah, so the one question I had, and thank you for bringing this up, and I know that some of this was brought up in the Finance Committee. Excuse me, sorry. I know with the water transfer that was something that was new. I had felt like the sewer transfer had been approved from 2023 prior, so that I would have thought that would have been in the 2023 budget even prior to us getting to that. Was that not put in by the prior finance director?
There was a sewer transfer in the 2022 budget, if I'm remembering it right.
Okay.
I don't believe there was one in the 2023 budget, but I will check on that, and if we need to make another correction, we will.
Okay.
But I don't believe there was for 20. I know there was one for 2022. I don't remember for 2023, but I will double check on that.
Okay, I remember us at some point saying, yes, we agreed that sewer needed to be done. I don't remember if that happened in time to get into the 23 budget or if that was the initial conversation on 24 budget. So my recollection of when it was, but I remember us approving water more recently, but I know we had approved sewer before that. I just don't remember where in processes that happened. So I just want to make sure that when we do this, we don't end up double approving transfers and wind up with more money going out than should. Other than that, I don't have any other issues. Again, appreciate thinking ahead so we don't have to do later on budget amendments to fix things for next year. I'm glad we're fixing those early, so thank you.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the public on this item?
Hi, Karen Eifert from the Knolls, and we would just talk to a lot of people, especially when I go to bingo night and there's tons of people around. And one thing that keeps coming back up is, when are we going to have our budget finalized from 22 and 23? When is that going to happen? Because a lot of people feel like it's being talked about, and like the finance director brings things up to us when we come here, not to us, to you. But it seems like it's not going anywhere, and the public would really like to know, when is our town going to be on budget for the years past, and when can we move forward with this year's budget and not have to keep doing all of these kind of juggling around like the finance director is asking. Instead, it can just be more transparent to all of the town of Wellington, to the citizens, to every Tom, Dick, and Harry that wants to pull up and say, hey, look, here's our balanced budget, which we haven't been able to say for years because everybody blames everybody else and everybody blames another previous board or whoever's going to blame what. But we'd really like to know, when are we going to get a balanced budget? Seemed to be a priority when you all were campaigning to come into office. And now it seems like less of a priority unless you're running for office and you still sit on this board. Then all of those guys who are running for April, they all want to talk about it, but it's the same as what it was when you guys were running. It's talk, and we would like to see and know when it's actually going to happen. We'd love to see a balanced budget so we don't feel like our town's in the hole all the time. Because it seems like to normal, just everyday people, citizens, they don't know that we're under budget. And then when they find out, they're ticked off. Or people move here, which has happened recently. A few different families have moved in. And they're like, what do you mean your town isn't budgeted? Why aren't they getting a balanced budget? That's not good for the town. It's not good for the people. It's not good for a lot of different things. But everybody will say the words town budget, but nobody knows a deadline when that's going to be fixed, when it's going to actually come out. And it's been years, and that should be able to be balanced each year. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board on this item? I know Don was actually planning on talking about the 2021 audit and where that's at and how the 22 and 23 are going to be
Right.
RFP'd.
Thank you, Mayor. If I just had a couple more minutes, just because we've had some movement recently, and I know there has been concern about it, so I'm glad the topic came up. But as the board and many in the community are painfully aware, the 2021 financial audit, has not been completed yet. So we hadn't started the 2022. When we started the budget process, we talked about that, and I won't bore everybody with the long history of why that's been delayed, but the most recent activity is this. I just got the financial statements and the notes to the financial statements, which are the core of what the auditors put together, sent to me last week. So I reviewed those, sent back my comments on that, and so we've had some back and forth since then. What we've done is we've put the 2021 audit on the next agenda. My hope is to be back here in 2 weeks to be able to present the 2021 audit, because we finally got that movement. They finally finished the financial statements and the notes of the financial statements. It's been months. I mean, I've been here since July, and it's taken that long for them to get that together. But they did. I turned right around and reviewed it, sent back my comments. And so it's looking good for that to be completed very soon. I know I've said that many times before, but I've never had the actual financial statements and notes to financial statements before, which we do finally have now. So I wanted to pass that news along because it is progress there. I will say, because I just always want to give caveats where they are. The last piece of the puzzle is, of course, the auditor's 2-page letter where they sign off and say, yes, these statements are fairly stated in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Only the auditor can sign that, and only the auditor can give me that. And I don't have that report yet. But as soon as we get these numbers worked out, I don't see any reason why I couldn't get it. So I hope to be back here in 2 weeks to show you that report. But getting that audit letter is not in my hands. So I'm hopeful that we're very close there. And then on to the 2022 audit. I've already been in conversation as recently as just today with our new auditors. Remember, we hired new auditors for 2022 and 2023. So even before I have the audit letter for 2021, this week we're going to be starting up 2022 audit. And what that, because there are pieces you can do even before you have the trial balance from the previous audit. There's internal control questionnaires that they go over. It's a new auditor, so they need to collect a lot of documents. So they're going to send me the links to set up. It's a portal where you upload all of our documents to their system. And then they send a list of what they call the prepared by client list, where they ask for information. And then in March, so within the next month, they're going to start testing of our systems, testing of our accounts payable systems and our payroll systems. All of the, what they call the interim testing is the things that you can do even before you have the trial balance. So I just wanted to pass along those two pieces that I know we've heard about 2021 for a long time, but I finally have the financial statements and the notes. I can't see any reason why that couldn't be wrapped up pretty soon now, but I don't control the audit letter that they sign off on. So let's keep our fingers crossed for 2 weeks from now. And then, but that doesn't stop us from starting in on 2022, because there are things we can do even before 2021 has started. So that would be the hope, is that 2022 marches along pretty well, because I've already got a pretty good 2022 trial balance. We had to have that to do the budget that we just did and pass. So I think that should move quickly along. But I'll reserve trying to make any predictions about timing there. But that will be with the new firm, a much bigger firm, who's got many more resources, and will have less issues with staffing and that sort of thing that we've seen in the past. So just wanted to pass that information along.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, you have his hand raised.
Trustee Gator.
Yes, thank you for the update, and did want to bring this up. I didn't ask last night because I try to lead the finance committee for the committee members to speak. But you had said that we have to get that letter from the auditors that says these numbers are all official, or whatever the letter they send. What is it that triggers the, obviously we don't know what's going on with these auditors in some levels, but you've been in the audit game for a long time. What triggers them actually sending that letter?
I mean, once the financial statements are done and we have no more questions and they have no more questions, then they can sign that letter and include it with the package, and we've got a completed set of financial statements at that point. So it's really, we're just doing the ticking and tying right now. It's literally, they send me their draft of the notes of the financial statements. Do the numbers add up? Do they tie to the financial statements? And that's the stage we're in right now, just a little bit of back and forth, making sure the numbers tie out. But there's no more questions or issues to go over. It's really just the ticking and tying of the numbers between the statements there. So that's why I'm hopeful. I can't think of why they couldn't prepare that letter shortly. I've just been I've been surprised or disappointed before, so that's why I pull punches just a little bit. But yeah, there's no reason why they couldn't do that soon, in my opinion.
Okay, so in terms of what they have sent back to you, and you said that you can send questions back or adjustments that you see, have all of the questions and things that you've seen been sent back to them, or have they adjusted those already, or are we still kind of in the back and forth process right now?
All the questions, I sent them a very detailed email over the weekend, all the questions that I had, where and again, it's just things where this number, it doesn't tie to that number, and shouldn't it, and things like that. Sent that over the weekend, and they responded, what's today, Tuesday? Yeah, earlier today, about their comments about it, and they didn't seem to have any issues with it. So it's literally in that stage where there aren't any accounting discussions or issues. It's just making sure there's a lot of numbers in a report and numbers in the notes that refer to numbers in the report. So just making sure everything ties out. And I'm a real stickler about those sort of things. So we sent that to them over the weekend, and it's just working through the making sure numbers tie out phase.
Perfect. So basically at this point, you're just waiting. Hopefully you should receive something back from them, shows the changes that you had. And then at that point, we're done. And in a normal world, we should be getting that final report from them. And once we receive that, it's finished.
Yes, the core of their report says the financial statements are fairly stated in accordance with general accepted accounting principles. That's what they're signing off on. And so there are no issues that would hinder them signing off on that. It's just a matter of getting the numbers tied down. So that's why we're real hopeful for 2 weeks from tonight. I've been doing this a long time, as you say, and I can't see why that couldn't happen. It's just, it's a small firm with a small staff and things have happened before. So hopefully I'll be back here in 2 weeks.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Gator. Do I hear a motion on this item?
I make a motion to approve resolution 12/2024, a resolution adjusting appropriations of the town of Wellington, Colorado for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2023 and ending on December 31st, 2023 and January 1st, 2024 and ending on December 31st, 2024.
A second.
Mr. Clerk, may I get a roll call, please?
Trustee Teets.
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand.
Yes.
Trustee Mason.
Yes.
Trustee Daly.
Yes.
Trustee Gator.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald.
Yes.
Mayor Shosse.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously and the resolution is approved.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, will you please read the title for item G2?
G2, ordinance number 04-2024, an ordinance authorizing collections and collection fees for municipal court assessments.
Ethan Muhs, the town clerk, will be presenting on this item. Mr. Muhs?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, members of the board. Ethan Muhs, town clerk. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. Give me just one moment and I'll get my presentation queued up here. Okay, fantastic. Tonight I'll be giving you a presentation for a proposed ordinance. The information in this presentation is intended to assist you in facilitating your decision on ordinance 4 this evening. This ordinance very basically authorizes the town to employ legal means of collecting outstanding debts from municipal court assessments. So here's some background information for you. There are 36 court cases that are eligible for collection since 2022. You can see the dollar value there is just under 7,500. 23 of those are for model traffic code violations and 13 are for other cases resulting from judgments in municipal court. Anytime the municipal judge assigns a case to collections, is a point at which the town then would proceed with collections actions. The municipal court is then responsible for sending out notices and collecting payments, but obviously can't compel non-compliant defendants to pay outstanding debts. Other municipalities in Colorado do contract with collections partners to recoup these debts as well. On the next slide here, we see a proposed or an example of what a collections process might look like. When the judge assigns a case to collections, the town would impose a collections fee not to exceed 25% in accordance with state statute and interest. Once those fees are assessed, then the case is given to a collections partner who then collects the debts from the defendants, removes a percentage of that fee that was assessed by the town as the collection partner's profit, and then returns the residual debt to the town. The town would then receive that debt and then conduct further action for that case, for example, closing the court case. Okay, the impacts of the proposed ordinance before you tonight would be that it authorizes the municipal court clerk to engage with and use lawful methods for collection, for example, contracting with collection partners. It permits the town to impose a fee for collections costs not to exceed that 25% of the outstanding debt value. And then it authorizes staff to approve agreements with collections partners. The bottom line for this proposed ordinance is that implementing this program is possible with no additional expense to the town. The collections program would be only applicable to municipal court cases upon the authority of the municipal judge assigning a case to collections. And then amending the municipal code will allow your staff to implement this program effectively. So with that, that was short and hopefully informative. I'm happy to take any questions that you might have regarding this item.
Start with trustee Daly. Trustee Mason. Mayor Pro Tem. Trustee Wiegand.
As somebody that's had to try to do the collections before from previous business that I was associated with, this is well worth the time. And our people don't need to be chasing the money. And if you can get, you know, a private source to do that, I think that's an extremely well use of our time and effort at that point. So agree 100%.
Thank you. Trustee Teets.
I agree, but I'm going to be the devil's advocate on this one. How many of these are related to people not paying their water bill? So none. So is it possible that people that couldn't pay their water bill will be turned over to collections for their water bill?
Not in accordance with this program, trustee Teets, unless they were to somehow violate the municipal code and be issued a violation summons to municipal court. But I believe that an outstanding water bill does not violate the town's code and result in a need for a summons to municipal court. Does that answer your question?
Partially, unless said person has a leak that was detected on their property that they can't afford to fix. And then it is not in compliance with our code that states that all of those pipes are supposed to be fixed and maintained according to town. Then does it become a municipal thing?
If they violate a town code around having pipes that are not in accordance with the town ordinances, and they are assessed a fine by municipal court,
Mhm.
and they do not pay that fine, then yes, this would authorize collections for that, but it would not authorize additional collections for their failure to pay their water bill. Their water bill
Got it.
is not, one of the reasons we, in discussions around this bill, there's talk about, should this be a town-wide collections? You know, we've got various reasons why people need to pay the town.
Mhm.
This is very purposefully just related to municipal court violations. So there is not a case where the municipal court would assess somebody a fine for not paying their water bill. Other water-related violations, that's a whole different issue, but not for not paying their water bill.
Got it. Perfect. I just know this specifically because we were dealing with a resident that was having this exact issue. She was either having a choice of having to pay her water bill or fixing a pipe that was broken in her yard and she has to have water. So the only other wording was, I don't know if this was new from the last time but it says the municipal clerk is authorized to use any lawful method of collection, fines, fees, etc., any means of means of collecting. So does that mean liens on homes, stuff like that? If they're liens on property?
Any lawful means of collections. This would include up to and including going to court, taking them to court again to get a money judgment in civil court. I mean, there's a lot of ways that this could be done. This authorizes any lawful means of collections. But a lien, I cannot imagine how you would turn a municipal court judgment into a lien, but if that's a lawful means of collecting, yes. The idea here is we have a lot of municipal court judgments that we can't go after at this point at all. There's no mechanism for us to do it. So what happens is the judge bangs her gavel, says this penalty is imposed. We take that piece of paper and put it in a file.
Got it. Perfect.
So
No, and like I said, I'm not against it. I just wanted clarification and wrapping my head around everything that was involved in the collection process and how that might relate to other things related to the town. Perfect.
we anticipated some of those questions, and I've been thinking about that a lot. And that's one of the reasons why this ordinance was written the way it was.
Perfect, because I see that going about 25 different ways.
Thank you.
That's
Trustee Gator?
Sorry, I had to get myself off of mute. I think the only question that I have, and actually is similar in line with that, I know that the only thing that it really has been discussed in preparation and lead up to this is that this would be used to allow us to hire a collections agency. But obviously the ordinance itself allows a larger ability than just that. Is there a policy that will be shared with the board, just that if staff ends up, I don't know what other option they would choose to pursue other than an agency, but that requires that to be brought to our attention before it's done.
There's no, thank you for your question, Trustee Gator. There's no planned policy to be implemented on staff side. Our goal is to find collections agencies that are willing to work within our constraints, that allow us to, employ a collections program with no additional expenses to the town. I can't imagine a case where, where the municipal court clerk would try to find a way to work outside of their legal authorization. But beyond that, hopefully that answers the part of your question you're looking for, but if you could further refine, I'm happy to try to answer it further.
So I guess the question is obviously, I understand we wrote this broadly because there may be different methods of collection that are needed to be utilized. And so I'm not saying that they are going to go and do something that's illegal. The question, this has been raised to me, is basically this allows us as the town of Wellington to hire a collections agency who will then follow up and collect on our debts for municipal court. That was the whole point of this. But that isn't specifically what the ordinance says, is this is all we're allowed to do is hire an outside agency to do collections. It basically says we can do any lawful method of collecting fine. Now, I don't know what other options there are, but my concern is if the town chooses to pursue some other options other than what has been presented to this board at this time, is there going to be some way that the board is informed, hey, we've chosen to go down a different road to pursue this new method of collecting our debts?
I've been, as Ethan mentioned, Mr. Muhs mentioned, certainly the plan is to hire a collections agency. This has been written broadly just to cover the range of possible, cover those future items so we don't have to come back for an ordinance change in order to make a kind of a policy change. It is possible that in the future, and I think some municipalities do this, they perform these collections efforts in-house. So this ordinance as written would include that. But of course, if we were to take this in-house, then that would probably require a budget amendment or something like that. So as he said, there's not a plan for a written policy saying we'll always use a collection agency, but I'm not sure what other lawful means there would be other than bringing this in-house. And of course, that would require a budget change.
And I guess, Trustee Gator, if you have other sort of use case concerns that you might want to ask about, I would be very happy to follow up with you point to point or through Ms. Garcia to kind of address those. But again, my hope would be to you and to the rest of the board that this ordinance is narrowly tailored enough to enable us to accomplish our, the collections program that we believe is valuable for the town in terms of collecting debts on outstanding municipal court judgments.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Gator. Any comments from the public on this item?
Can I ask that you don't stand behind me, sir? Can you go over on this side? Thank you. My name is Karen. Eifert, and I live in the Knolls. I have PTSD and I don't like a man standing behind me, so that's why I asked for that. So my biggest concern is this is a blanket. It's very broad, as our town attorney just said. There's not a lot of detail down to what is considered to be able to be used, not just a debt collection agency, but he also talked about in-house. And I will tell you that if I have I'm sorry, I think his name is Mr. Muth. Is it Muth or Moose?
Moose.
Moose, like the animal?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. If Mr. Moose showed up on my property, I would just immediately call Larimer County Sheriff. I don't think it's the right of the town to say, we're going to make this blanket statement to collect these in however way we need necessary. Am I behind in anything in this town? No. Are my bills paid up? Yep. But I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of people that if they start getting people walking up to their house and invading their privacy and saying, you owe these things, and it's not through an agency that's licensed and has not notified our sheriff's department of what they're doing or any of those types of things, you're going to have a lot of people who are really willing to go to bat. I don't know why the video ended. Oh, is it just my clock? Okay. So, I mean, that's just like me saying, well, you got your leg cut open. So there's 14 ways that I can handle it. So I'll decide which one's best for you. One of those decisions might include, amputation, and you may not like that, but it's my decision to make that choice for you because you passed this ordinance saying that I could. This is exactly what is going on with this ordinance. It's a blanket ordinance. There is no fine detail of what can or cannot happen to our citizens, to our elderly, those citizens or anybody else. And I think that there needs to be much more fine detail because really you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. And I don't think that you should do that without a lot of set guidelines. And I think that there should be an agency involved, and that agency can, if we hire them, then do like you guys have done with lots of other agencies that you've used for different things, even down to our Boxelder man that was just here, Tim. Just make sure that they know that what they're doing, they know the legalities of it, and that they're held to the standard of those legalities. I don't think it should be any town staff member to show up on somebody's property, especially not without permission from that person, either by email, phone call, or whatever means necessary. I think this is asking for a lot of bad things to happen. Then Larimer County Sheriff's offices are going to have to be called on. Like we were just saying, there's a lot of mental health problems going on in our country and even right here in Wellington. And people take that as a threat on their home, on their livelihood. And I really hate to see something like this happen. And then we have to call the LCSO, and then people on both sides of the aisle get hurt. Maybe not like physically, but that's going to emotionally happen to a lot of people, and the trust in our town and our town attorney and our town employees. And I really think it's time for us to take a stand and say, you know what, we're not going to blanket this. We're going to do some more research and find out the true answer, and not just say, well, we kind of sort of could do this or kind of sort of could do that. I think there needs to be an exact plan with a licensed and insured agency that is of all the legalities of anything that they try to do, and that they're held to that standard. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board on this? Trustee Gator.
Yeah, so the one thing that I did want to bring up is I think is a possible solution to kind of the concerns that I had, as well as what Mrs. Eifert just shared with the board, is can we ask that staff put together and it can be as a short policy, but basically saying, here is what our current plan is as far as how we're going to handle collections. And that can spell out, this is what we're going to put together. We're going to use a collections agency. And the nice thing with that is that can be adjusted without having to go through the whole ordinance process. We can leave the ordinance broad, that's what sets the law. But then we can say, so public is aware of what the collections process is. So the Board of Trustees is aware. We can just put together a policy that basically states this is how we're going to go about collections for municipal court. Is that something that the board is comfortable with saying, hey, staff, we'd like you to just put this together? It doesn't necessarily need to come back for a board vote, I don't think, but I think it's something that we should have that's publicly available. The board is made aware of and spells out how we are going to be utilizing this enforcement that we're giving.
If it would be helpful, Trustee Gator, I would be very happy to show you some examples of collections contracts that other municipalities have used that might help to sort of narrow the use case or the terms in your other members of the board's minds regarding how the collections program would be implemented. But the goal would be to use one of the many well-established and well-known collections agencies that perform these types of services for other similar municipalities. With regards to policy, I'm happy to defer to Ms. Garcia or Mr. Sapienza if they have any further comments that they'd like to make on this.
So in terms of my mind with the contract side of it, unless it reaches the board's purchasing level well, I guess any outside contract ends up having to come back to the board. So that would come to us for that. That's not so much the concern on my end, is even it doesn't need to be, but literally just even something short that could be like 2 paragraphs long saying the town will be contracting with a license, whatever the wording is, just saying this is what we're going to do. It doesn't need to say who the company is, just basically when you're building an RFP, right, you're putting out, here's what we're looking for, a company that has this, and that. You can literally build that into a paragraph or two that says, this is our policy for collections. That's all I'm looking for. Literally like a couple of paragraphs that defines, this is how we're going to be handling this. And then the specifics of that will be highlighted in the contract, but that'll come to us whenever it's time for that approval. So I don't know if that makes sense what I'm asking for.
Sure. This is Patti. Thank you, Trustee Gator. We try very hard to be very transparent with all of our actions. So if this ordinance would be passed, it goes into effect in 30 days. It gives us the opportunity to update our website and make sure that the information is available to those who may be affected by this. We will also put out the information in municipal court. Judge Tria Blau will make sure that defendants are aware of our processes. So that was kind of assumed, and I guess we didn't go through what our administrative process would be to implement this. But yes, that is part of the plan.
So we will have some sort of a internal policy or whatever that describes what our collections process will be?
Correct.
Okay, and is that something that we are able to share with the Board of Trustees and even potentially link that somewhere on the town website for those that are concerned?
Yes.
Perfect. That's all I'm asking for. Thank you.
Any further board comments?
I'm grateful, thanks. I wanted to, if we've never had collections before, and then all of the sudden people start receiving these collection notifications, it's just, yes, they owe a bill, but also at the same time, I just want to make sure that there's notice of how we're doing the collections, because this just says that any lawful collecting. So, and I just wanted to make sure. So that was the only reason why I had asked the question. I still support the collection process in general. I just didn't understand how that process was going to happen.
One of the things I just asked Ethan, and we'll check in on and let you all know, is how many of them are actually Wellington residents?
Right.
We don't know. So we're going to check into that. We'll definitely brief you all and make sure you have information about the policy and the process and things like that as we move forward.
All right. Do I hear a motion on this item?
Given the concerns have been acknowledged, I do move to approve ordinance 4/2024, an ordinance authorizing collections and collections fees for municipal court assessments.
I'll second.
Mr. Clerk, make it a roll call, please.
Trustee Daly,
Yes.
trustee Mason,
Yes.
trustee Teets,
Yes.
trustee Gator,
Yes.
trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald,
Yes.
Mayor Shosse.
Yes,
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously and the ordinance is approved.
thank you. Next, we'll move on to reports. Mr. Sapienza.
No report today.
Thank you, sir. Town Administrator.
Let's have a quick update. There at our work session, at the last meeting, there was a comment made about animal control services or our code enforcement officer having some animal control duties. That was brought up by NOCO Humane, and there was a request to provide some more detail about that, about what our staff's responsibilities have been in the past. When the comment was made, I was very surprised because as long as I've been here, I've never known our code enforcement officer or neighborhood services officer to be handling animals whatsoever. So past code enforcement or neighborhood service officer positions have performed both municipal code enforcement and assisted with animal control. So the required job responsibilities for past positions did not include handling animals and have not included specific training or certifications for handling animals, and proper personal protective equipment for animal handling has not been provided. Past positions have also relied heavily upon Larimer County Humane or NOCO Humane to provide those services. There was a time in the past when we had, thank you, and there were some animal control services that were provided, maybe not included in job description.
Kind of Wild West.
Yes. we did go back and look at job descriptions and it does say, may assist with animal control, may help with whatever, but none of it ever said shall. It was never part of the job responsibilities. Our current code enforcement officer does handle things like barking dogs and things like that, and will be on site if, to be there if for some, I can't imagine, but I mean, if there's an animal issue and no humane's on the way, our neighborhood services officer will be on site if needed, until someone can come on site. So we've never had animal control as part of our town services. It's not something we have provided formally in the past. We've always used NOCO Humane as our provider. That's been their role. So that's what I have for you. If you have any questions, Cody Bird is here. He's been overseeing the position and has a lot more history than I do. Like I said, I was completely caught off guard when the comment was made at the last meeting, so I appreciate the time to be able to pull some information together and do my research to find out exactly what the responsibilities were.
Trustee Gator. Thank you, Ms. Garcia.
Yeah, just if you could work on getting numbers together for us on if that's the case, that they were truly operating as our full-time, whatever you want to call it, animal control. Could we actually have numbers as to exactly what was done over the last 3 years in terms of what services they provided?
I'm sorry, from Larimer County Humane Society?
Yes, so if they were operating as basically, they were our animal control for the last 3 years, if we could actually see those numbers by year, like, okay, what did they actually do? So I think that's been one of the major hiccups, because it was like on one side, I've heard, hey, well, we haven't had animal control, we're not, and then the last meeting, they were the ones that were like, well, we were the backup to animal control. So I was like, wait a second. So really trying to understand, okay, what have we actually been using? What are the numbers? Because that really comes into, okay, what are we trying to add in? Because it's like, well, if the numbers don't support that if we've been doing nothing for animal control, now all of a sudden we're adding this new position, that's a far cry from we're trying to maintain kind of what we're doing. So would appreciate actually being able to see numbers on that. Thank you.
Of course, thank you.
Thank you. Staff communications are in the packet if you have any questions on these. No? No. All right, board reports. Trustee Teets.
I have a few. So like mentioned, this last Saturday, I was able to host all of the candidates at the T-Bar here in Wellington, and we had an open forum meet and greet. That video has hit 300 and some odd views already. So I know it's getting seen and people are actually wanting to learn and know and pay attention to kind of what's going on in our community. We had some newer residents come out that had been asking a lot of questions, some that I still can't answer all of them for. So it was great to see some of those people come out and be able to actually engage and have a chance to ask some of the questions to the people they were curious about themselves. Thank you to Ace Entertainment. She actually provided all of the sound system for free and delivered it for us. So that was really neat of her to do that. My other thing is I know as we're looking at and strategic planning for the next 2 years, I know that it was posted online that we are looking at a strategic planning event before our new officials are elected this year. So the meet and greet with the community and items like that. And so I just wanted to make sure that I was kind of on par, kind of check myself to see if, okay, maybe it was just an odd thing this last election we had run, and it actually hasn't been. I couldn't find any time since we have started our strategic plan that it was completed before our new members were actually placed. I have extended an invite to all of the candidates that are running if they do want to take that opportunity to have that meet and greet time and engage and talk with the community about them. They're going to be possibly working with us the next 2 years for sure and 4 years with some of the other boards. So if it's available and it's not a time crunch, I would love to be able to move this a few weeks till after we are elected, if that's something that can garner the board support. If not, I don't, everyone that I'd sent, so Mario Quinones, Ed Cannon, and Lowry Moyer all received the invite from me. They said they would put it in their calendar. So I'm good either way now that I've kind of done my due diligence and making sure that all of the candidates were included. But that's my other thing, if the board wants to weigh in on that one.
What are the board's thoughts on this? You want to move the citizen input, or do we want to keep it where it is and just have the candidates come?
Collecting information and engaging with the public is suitable at all times. So whenever we have the opportunity to formally organize and welcome the community into and to provide feedback to the town, it is always welcome. I think this is strategic in that we're planning for the strategic plan to make sure that whoever the incoming board is, that they have as much information as possible to start off running. They will have the information from start with plenty of data and information, results from engagement directly with the public. If I were to be on a board and be brand new, I would love to know exactly what my town is trying to help, what I'm representing for my town. So I would love that on day one. I think the timing is planned specifically for that reason, to support the new board. And I agree with the date that it is scheduled at right now.
Trustee Mason?
Maybe Ms. Garcia, can you maybe give us some clarification as far as is this more to
Citizen
discuss what we've
engagement.
done as far as the current strategic plan, or are we talking, is the intention to have another strategic planning session after the new board has been seated? I would assume that's the case.
That is the case. The intent of this, and as staff, we are, if the board would like to move it into April, we are perfectly fine with that. But the intent was to gather community input, be able to analyze the data, put the information together into something succinct, and then have it prepared for the Board of Trustees when they go into their board development and strategic planning, hopefully end of April, first part of May. So timing is a little tight when we think about wanting to get through board development, strategic planning, goal setting, all the community input and engagement that you want to have before we start working on the budget. Because the goal is to have these goals and things set out prior to us, before you all start engaging in the budget process. That way staff has an idea of what projects does the town want us to work on in 2024 and 2025 and 2026. So like I said, it's a tight time frame. We are fine with moving it after the April election if that's the decision of the trustees. We were just trying to get ahead of the ball, get ahead of the game a little bit, but like I said, we work for you all, so want to make sure that we are accomplishing your needs as well.
Yeah, so I think frankly, a lot of these things take a whole lot of work behind the scenes, right? So quite frankly, I have no issue with keeping the March 19th meeting. We're certainly going to be having many more discussions about the strategic plan after that date. So I am just fine with keeping it where it is and having future sessions as needed.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I would agree. I've had the opportunity to serve on the board when we didn't have a strategic plan and be a part of it and see how that tool is used to help us make decisions. I believe that this is a document that has the opportunity to evolve and change. And also, I think it's it's a great opportunity to honor and make sure that we're looking at the mistakes and the things that have worked well in the past before we talk too much about making great big significant changes for the future. So I think that this is a great opportunity for additional community engagement. It's a wonderful tool for new board members to use to help give them a roadmap on where we're trying to go instead of starting over from scratch. So yeah, I support the extra community engagement. I think that's awesome.
Trustee Wiegand?
I agree. I think we ought to keep it where it's at currently. And we have the invitations out to all the people that are running. And so we're going to have the community input at that point too. So I think that's going to be a great thing again to get started running it on this. So perfect.
Trustee Gator.
Yeah, so I think that the way this came about is we try to do quarterly town halls, right? And we kind of look at this coming into an election year is one of the first things the new board does is a strategic planning session. And so it's good to go into that because excuse me, when I look back at the first year we did this, we didn't have that community input that first year. So when the board was putting together our, and Trustee Daly and Mayor Pro Tem McDonald were a part of that, you know, we as a board and staff kind of put together our thoughts as to what priorities should be, but there was really no resident input into that because there hadn't been a chance to do a survey or anything like that. And then I know this last year, when we had this last year, 2 years ago, the last election, we were able to actually do that town hall, gather some input. So we actually had community input. So I think that's really valuable. And I agree, having that time frame ahead is important. So I think we should keep the date. The one thing that I would say is I don't know what the method or methodology of the town hall is going to be. My one ask would be, I know typically for me, it's one of the good things is being there present is actually able to hear the context, because in a lot of times things will get written down or compiled into ideas, which you may be missing a lot of context around what the initial, idea was when you just see the summary. And so I think there's a lot of value in the candidates being there, because if they're elected, they need to have that context. But two, I would say maybe if we as the board will have opportunity to maybe ask clarifying questions or to, ask for something to be expounded on or whatever, that we provide that same option to the candidates. So that would be my one ask at that town hall, that maybe we kind of treat the candidates as quasi trustee members. That way they would have the ability to maybe ask those questions, because they may be the ones needing, needing to make decisions based on that input in just a month or so. So that would be my only ask that we do, is just basically treat them for that meeting as if they were a part of the board, so that they can ask questions or gather more information. If the board's comfortable with that, I agree we should keep it on the same date. That way we have time to compile everything so the new board has everything they need to move into the strategic planning.
And speaking to that, just so everyone's aware, all candidates have received the exact same communication regarding the dates and schedule and plans already. All candidates have already received that, the same as Board of Trustees have. I've been copied on them just to make sure everybody has all the exact same information. So that's already in place. So I'm happy that that was thought about in advance. Thank you.
So I just want to, you're being copied as a candidate and as a trustee, so you're getting double.
Correct. I'm getting
Okay.
it's the same communication.
You didn't mention that you invited Trustee Gator and Trustee Daly, so I think she was just clarifying that. You were also.
I didn't receive an invite from the town.
Yeah.
I saw it on Facebook.
Yeah.
So I didn't even receive an email from the town.
Candidates have been copied on all communications that are applicable that go to the Board of Trustees currently.
But it hasn't come to us. So that was the catch to what I was saying is no one received the invite for that in general through email. That's why I sent out the personal emails to each of the candidates. I haven't received an email about it.
Okay, we'll take a look.
Interesting.
Right. Yeah. And it has the Board of Trustee distribution on it. So, well, we can check on it later, but
Yeah.
definitely-
I think it's on my calendar. It came through on an email. But neither here nor there.
I had some work.
Is that?
No, I had one additional one that I was kind of hoping for support. If not, I definitely can bring back on an agenda item for a vote. Generalized last year, gosh, was it been last year, a year and a half already? We saw a presentation to us about a possible banning of books or an allegation of banning of books here in the community. And I sit and I watch people that one is a trustee that never sat and asked to ban a book. And then we had people come and public comment and possibly asked to ban a book. I didn't hear anything related to specifically banning a book. I heard moving books, What I am generally looking for is for us to, as a board, agree to a statement that can be published somewhere viewable, where someone doesn't have to go and defend someone on a regular basis against an allegation that may not be true. I think that it'll help deliver a truth to our board and also to our community. I'd ask that this town staff be able to prepare a statement and then the trustees review it and it comes back to us for review and approval. Just something that stops this insane divide. And it is hitting a point where we're having parody channels made to harass some of our trustees and their families. The sad thing is some of them come and sit in this very room and will smile and say hello and then produce these videos online that are horrific. So I'm trying to figure out how to mitigate future arguing. If anyone has received specific emails to themselves asking to ban books, if we could forward those to Patti, and whichever way that goes, just so it's finally out there and ends arguments, is pretty much what I'm trying to do with this.
So can you specifically state what you're looking for so we can make the decision on that?
Yes, I am looking for a statement from the Board of Trustees related to the issue of allegations of banning books that came before us as trustees. What I'm looking for is something that outlines what actually happened in those events.
So like a summary
Yes,
of what,
of what happened in our trustee meeting.
They're all recorded, are they not?
No, it's blippy and you can't see all of it. So some of the video is dropped out.
so
Aren't the minutes our official record of that meeting?
but yeah, there'd be the minutes.
So do we have the actual minutes from that meeting?
Every meeting we approve them in the consent
No,
agenda.
but they don't specifically state what is said per.
Or is a dictation.
Yeah, like of the meeting, you want it just everything typed out?
Well, and I would love to have it typed out, us read it, review it, and actually agree to it as a board.
The
'Cause-
dictation?
Yes,
Okay. So your idea, okay, so this is your idea, that we get a dictation of the meeting. We all get the opportunity as a board to review it.
Mhm.
This is something that would be sent out to us prior to a meeting. And then at that meeting, it would be something that we all agree that that's the dictation.
yes.
Would that not come from the recording though? Which
Well, if the
is
recording's
thing we're
spotty, like
referencing?
she's saying,
It doesn't. That, and I
guess-
have a GoPro recording of it,
I mean-
but some of that's even spotty.
You don't, the recording.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah, if the recording's spotty, how do you get a dictation?
I have a quick comment on this, and this is proceeding really closely to concerns of First Amendment rights. So, I mean, if the core concern is we are upset or disagree with people's voice and what they're saying in public,
That's not the core concern.
one
Well,
moment, please.
yeah, please.
So, and then rather than, allowing people to freely speak and say what they want to say, we don't get to pick which ones we agree with or don't, or need to disprove or don't. So I just want us to proceed very cautiously for us to make a specific statement against free speech of individuals to disprove them on behalf of the board and representing the town of Wellington. That's, and I'm saying this is how I would perceive it. So that would be my concern. And we don't get to pick First Amendment rights. Your voice is right, your voice is wrong. People get to say what they want to say. And I disagree with a lot of thoughts and things that are said, but I don't get the right to stand before us as a board and disagree with them and make a public statement. So I just want us to proceed cautiously about the First Amendment.
Can I
Stand behind it.
clarify my request then? Because it's not making a lot of sense. What I am asking for is a way to dictate or produce actual records of the whole meeting and then vote on what was said and what we saw at the meeting. I'm not asking for you to vote on your feeling of what it was. There, it's factual.
Well, I think you clarified it. Yeah, I'm stopping the fight. Thank you. I think the clarification you had there is you're wanting the meeting to be clarified and voted on, right? Like what occurred?
Yes.
Is
Can
that
I-
possible without the recording?
Can I put in my 2 cents
Yeah,
here?
go ahead, Trustee Gator. Yeah, I didn't see your hand up. Sorry.
Middle of all this? I think that the issue is what has been continually said in the community is that my wife and I asked for books to be banned. What actually happened was a group of residents, one of which was my wife, brought concerns to the Board of Trustees about content that was in books that were in our library and books that were available to children. Several people asked for several different things, but most of them were around whether or not children should have access to those without parental knowledge. There was no request that things should be banned, no one should be allowed to have it. And I think that that's what, if I understand Trustee Teets is asking correctly, is that there was never a request brought to the board to ban books. No member of the board suggested banning books, to just at least put that piece to rest. Now, people can totally disagree with ideas and what people do or do what or don't want. So I think that is what she's trying to go towards.
Okay. So what we're looking for is a statement that no trustee requested a banning of books, nor did a resident directly request banning of books. Is that what I'm gathering? Trustee Gator?
That's my guess. I mean, Trustee Teets, you can.
Okay.
I just,
Okay,
that's
trustee,
my
okay. Okay, so that's Trustee Mason, do you have a thought?
Well, I fundamentally disagree with that because quite frankly, I'm looking at a message right here that was clearly posted to Facebook that comes from Trustee Gator's wife. There are sexually explicit books in the Wellington Library. Also, anyone want to help get rid of these, PM me. That sounds like banning books to me. I could be wrong.
Sounds like, but it's an interpretation.
Okay, so guys, I think if we want to have this conversation in an actual meeting as an agenda item, it's a great idea to actually have the conversation, but not in board reports.
Fair enough. So does the board want to have this as an agenda item in a future meeting?
I think this is a big time waster. Quite frankly, I would invite any member of the public that wants to go back and view the March 14th, 2023 meeting on YouTube. Please feel free to do that. But otherwise, I think we're spinning our wheels on this, quite frankly.
I don't feel it's spinning our wheels.
Can
If
I-
you're seeking truth,
I just read.
Mayor Pro Tem?
that's not truth. That wasn't brought to us as trustees. You can interpret manipulation however one wants to. But what I'm trying to do is extinguish an assumption, because the same thing could be done if I read a trustee candidate's post saying that we are 101 children that aren't qualified to sit on this board. Am I assuming that I'm not qualified? Assumption is everything. But the reality that we face is whatever goes on outside of this, you're allowed and entitled to your own opinion. The only thing that we can report on that's factual is what actually came before us as a board, because that is what's being said. Trustee asked to remove or ban books, which is absolutely false. A trustee's wife asked to ban a book. She did not come before me in private or up on that diocese and ask us to ban a book. It's time to admit that we've manipulated words and misunderstood. She may have very well meant that at first. And then if someone talked to her and explained the reality, it could have very well changed her mind later. But no one came before us and requested it. Sorry, go ahead.
Fine. Mayor Pro Tem?
I can speak on behalf of myself. So I did not request that the item be brought in front of the board regarding specifically banning books in the community. What I did support specifically was a resolution against banning books, regardless of what happened in that meeting. That's my position on that. But what you were requesting, specific to a dictation of that meeting, I don't think that's an unreasonable request because we do have an obligation to be ADA transparent. Maybe a visual dictation or being able to read that is not an unreasonable request. But I am not in favor of bringing this back. I'm not in favor of the Board of Trustees providing an additional statement. We approved the minutes from that meeting. That is our statement of the action that was taken at that time. But I don't think it's unreasonable to request a transcript. Thank you. Transcript of that recording. Now, I understand that it may be fuzzy, so there will be gaps, but reading the word may be a better way for somebody to input that information than just hearing it. So I would be supportive of that. I understand that that may take staff time to do, but I don't want to bring this back to the board for another discussion. The issue here is far bigger than the discussion about banning a book. It's about how we operate and conduct ourselves as board members. And I think there's room for improvement. I think the board will get there. But specific to this topic, I don't think that that's appropriate. But a transcript, yes.
And in the past, we've had closed caption recorded too, so that potentially is already available. I mean, to the extent we can't recall the words unless they were in the recording or in the closed caption. I mean, I don't remember word for word exactly how it went. So if that's the record that's available, I mean, there's no possible way of retrieving word for word if it's not recorded. So I don't think it's possible. But I mean, that's why we include closed caption. I haven't looked at that video in particular, but that's generally how it's been in the past. So it's definitely worth looking into. And if it's not, transcribing would be a great idea.
Well, reading black and white for some people with,
like-
visual impairment is
Oh,
very
I see.
different than.
I see.
Can I get to Trustee Weekend?
I'm in favor of a transcript and it's just going to clarify everything. So, and people can present that and they can interpret it however they want, but words are words and it's going to explain exactly what happened. So I think that's a good way to do it.
My main goal is to stop seeing people in our community be ridiculed for something that we could easily fix. My main goal is, and honestly, I would ask the same thing for anyone sitting up here. If you've seen what they've said and seeing Trustee Gator called a Nazi and his wife called a Nazi, it's gotten to a point where we should want to do better. We know the truth. We should want to do better and just speak the truth. Instead, we're going to rely on twisted lies and manipulation when we already know. Maybe we'll have a transcript. Great. That would be wonderful. When we already know as trustees what that truth is, if I have to bring it back as an agenda item, I need one additional person for support. I don't have to have the board agree with me to bring it back on an agenda item. I was trying to be kind and upfront at first because I wanted, you always say, open the lines of communication, make this a working group. This is not a working group. When you're willing to sit here and say you're not going to seek the truth for our residents and you're not going to provide that truth when you know what that truth is. That's what bothers me about this whole situation.
The transcript would be a truth though, wouldn't it?
They said not if it's spotty.
Well, I guess it depends on where it's spotty, right?
So then, but the thing is, at the end of the day, we all know the truth.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. What else?
Okay. Is that the last of your board report? Okay. You have any board reports, trustee Wiegand,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem,
No, sir.
trustee Mason?
I am very excited to announce that I believe by next month, the Larimer County Opioid Abatement Council should be approving about $400,000 worth of grant funding to Harvest Farms right here in Wellington. So I'm very excited about that. And so once that gets approved, I'll bring it back to you guys and let you know.
Very cool. Trustee Daly?
I got to participate in an activity on Saturday that I wanted to share with everybody. We have people in the community doing wonderful things, so it's worth celebrating. Between the three entities of Old Colorado Brewing, Fitness One, and the American Legion, they hosted a Run for the 22 activity to, raise money for the American Legion. They're working towards getting a brick and mortar actual location so that they can provide more support, of course, to our veteran community. And then, of course, bringing, awareness to mental health and for our veterans. So I wanted to commend them for participating and contributing to our community so much. It's nothing new from these groups and these people, but it's worth celebrating. So thank you. I also am out of shape, so I only did 2 miles, but I'm proud of that. So, but if you have an opportunity to participate in any of these community activities, this is how we build community. This is how we build trust. This is how we, support one another. So please take advantage of any of these opportunities. Another update I have is, this is the second year of it, but the Wellington Middle High School will have, their drama club is going to have a show. It's Clue. And it's going to be in April. The showings are going to be on April 12th, 13th, and 14th. We celebrate a lot of the sports items. I mean, I do too. I'm out there cheering for a football team. But there are other clubs at the school too, definitely worth promoting and supporting. So I wanted to let you guys know about that. And then it was mentioned earlier, but I just wanted to bring it in this term. There's an opportunity for community to provide direct feedback to how this town works and how we represent you. And I invite everyone to attend, everybody and anybody to attend. And that's going to be for our town hall that's currently scheduled on March 19th. It's going to be collecting information directly from our residents and businesses. I invite everyone to attend. That would be information that would be provided to then in the future build a strategic plan. So please attend that if you can.
Thank you. Trustee Gator?
Might help if I
Present.
unmute, start talking. I had a couple of things that I did want to bring up. Number one, this was something I think is actually currently going through the state legislature right now. So this wouldn't be something that would go into effect this year, but probably next year if it does pass. So I don't know if this is more of just a preparation, but it has to do with core requests. And if I remember correctly, they are talking about creating like a nuisance category or something. I don't remember the exact wording, but that basically people can be filed as, I'm going to call it nuisance. There's a different word for it. But excuse me. If you get filed within that category, basically their time frame to answer your request goes to 30 days, I believe. And so I don't believe it has passed yet. It may not pass, but it's something I did want to put into the thought process. So even if it's just having Mr. Sapienza maybe keep an eye on that. One of the things that I would like to say is if that does get passed into law is to know, because we talk about transparency and being open as being a big deal within Wellington, is that we maybe even as part of just our internal Cora policies, put in there that if for someone to get added on that list has to come to the Board of Trustees, so that it's something that staff, basically we add an additional step that says, hey, this person is abusing the Cora system, but they're not just automatically going to get tacked into this new nuisance status, but that actually comes to the elected officials before that happens. So I don't know if that law will pass, but it's something I want to just make sure that we're keeping on our radar, because that's something that definitely does impact the transparency. If we start saying, hey, well, we don't like answering this person's request, we're going to label them as this, and now we're going to delay how they get information. The second thing, sorry, I'm not there with you guys, but I didn't want to get anyone else sick. So that's why I'm glad I'm not there. But I did want to just put a reminder to all of us as trustees that when we're in our meetings, we've talked in the past about not having sidebar conversations. I've been watching multiple trustees passing notes back and forth between each other, either written or on phones. Our public is watching us. I actually got a text message. Normally my phone is in my bag. It's sitting next to me on my desk today. I got a text message from a resident who's saying, hey, I'm watching trustees passing notes during the meeting. So it'd be nice if we could actually focus on the meeting, not be silently passing notes. If there's a conversation that needs to be had, maybe have that with the whole board and not just with the trustee sitting next to you. So that's all I got.
Thank you.
Can I address that accusation really quickly? Just to be clear, Trustee Daly and I were not passing a note. I was pulling up the screenshot for the message that I was reading in my statement prior. She happened to have the same screenshot pulled up as well. I thought that was kind of telling of the entire thing. So
Assumptions, right? Best interests. We can all work on it. Okay. Having no further business, Mr. Clerk, make it a roll call, please.
Would you like to request a motion first?
Oh, yeah.
Adjourn, Mayor Shosse?
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Aye.
So moved.
Would you like a roll call, Mayor Shosse?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Trustee Teets,
Yes.
Trustee Daly,
Yes.
Trustee Mason,
yes.
Trustee Gator,
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McDonald,
Yes.
Mayor Shosse.
Yes,
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
thank you. I now adjourn the regular meeting time being 9:52 p.m.
Is that right?
Oh, just to update.
Here in Wellington and surrounding other rural